Good morning. It is 10 o'clock, and I call this Dunwoody special called meeting to order on September 29th. Councilwoman Harris, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge?
As you're able, please rise. At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, Richard. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Pull up the presentation. Good morning, Mayor and Council. This morning, we're going to go over the 2026 proposed budget. The run of show, so to speak. We've got a very, very high level summary of the operating budget, mainly focusing on the general fund, roughly 8 or 9 slides. Take a quick pause there to see if there's any questions about the operating budget before we'll move on to the capital slides and some capital budget as well. So that's our plan as of right now. So I will go on ahead and jump in. I'm sorry. So the budget is required to be published. The proposed budget is required to be published by the end of August 31st. We did put it on the website and published it on August 27th. So that allowed for 2 full months of review. As a note, based on the charter, if it's not approved by November 1st, the proposed budget will be the budget that's in effect for 2026. So as I mentioned, this workshop specifically reviews is going to focus on a couple of things: the general fund operating budget, capital funds, SPLOST, Hotel Motel, and General Capital Project are our 3 large capital project funds, and then discussion of any of available funding for any capital needs and major unmet needs as well. So to give a little bit of background, earlier this year in July, let me back up even further. The 2025 budget was adopted with a use of fund balance of approximately $1.2 million. However, based on the actual results of 2024, in July, we trued up the 2025 budget, I should say, to equal the 2024 actuals. That eliminated the use of fund balance. So there is no use of fund balance in the 2025 budget as it stands. As a matter of fact, we haven't used fund balance for the last 6 years since COVID basically began. So, and that's the same philosophy that we use to develop the 2026 budget. Continue the trend of not using general fund balance to balance the budget, and to keep the general fund unassigned fund balance at least 6 months, a minimum of 6 months, which is 2 months above the 4-month minimum reserve. A real quick summary of what happened in 2025. It was higher than a couple of line items on revenue, particularly the digest growth and a couple of franchise fees, business tax, occupation taxes, and insurance premium taxes all came in higher than what we'd estimated. So between the higher revenue growth and the expense controls that we continue to have in place, we were able to generate enough money to adjust the budget for 2025 and not have to use fund balance. So this is a very high level summary of the general fund, and it shows 3 years. It shows 2024 actuals, the 2025 budget as it currently stands, and then the 2026 proposed budget. I'll walk through all of this in a little bit of detail just so everybody has a good background. We started 2024 with $26.4 million in unassigned fund balance. Recurring revenues were $35.3 million, with one-time revenues being about $1.1 million. Those were transfers from ARP into the general fund. So total revenue in 2024 was $36.4 million. Expenses, $32.4 in recurring, and one-time expenditures about $375,000. $32.8 million in total expenditures. So that meant that revenue exceeded expenditures by $3.5 million, and that was added to unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. So we finished 2024 with $29.9 million in unassigned fund balance. That represents about 11 months of coverage, so to speak. And then it shows below what a 4-month reserve would look like. That'd be about $11 million. So at the end of the year, we were 19 million above the 4-month and 13 million above the 6-month. So during 2025, continue over with that beginning unassigned fund balance of $29.9 million. We are projecting during 25 about $35 million in revenue plus $2 million in transfers from ARPA2. So 2025 is $37 million in revenue, a balanced budget, so $35 million in expenditures. We will end the year with $29.9 million in unassigned fund balance is the estimate. That is roughly $10 million of months unassigned in fund balance. So that leaves a 4-month reserve of about $12.1 million, and again, 17.8 above the 4 months and 11.8 above the 6-month. So carrying that forward to 2026, this budget includes $38 million in recurring revenues with 0 one-time revenues. There are no additional revenues, one-time revenues in this budget. Recurring expenditures are $37.4 million with one-time expenditures about $570,000. And that totals $38 million as well. So again, as of today, the forecast for 2026 at the end of 2026 is to have $29.9 million in unassigned fund balance. That would leave us about $9.6 million unassigned. 4-month reserve would need to be $12.5 million. So the amounts above that, above the 4-month reserve, are 17.5, and the amount above the 6-month reserve is $11.2 million. So as of today, that's the snapshot of how we finished 2024, what the budget looks like for 2025, and what the proposed budget before you looks like for 2026. So we'll talk about general fund operating revenue next. Notes. So a lot of these were we took a step back in this, and while a lot of these revenues are still conservative, we took a step back and realized, okay, here's 2024 actuals, and kind of did some trend analysis and history there to project what we actually think 2025 would look like, to try to get a more realistic yet conservative 2026 revenue number. So that's why you see the 8.6% growth overall in revenue. While still conservative, we did try to do some trend analysis from the 2024 actuals and prior, using some history there to forecast out what we think 2026 revenue is. We're very comfortable with it. The very first line, property taxes, we have a 3.5% increase in the net digest. We've seen it be as high as 7.7% in the last couple of years, 5% last year. So 3.5% is kind of, again, falling within that trend, so to speak. Franchise fees, that large one is the largest revenue source in franchise fees is the Georgia Power franchise fee that they pay at the end of February for the prior year. That has seen a significant jump over the last couple of years, so we're forecasting that as well. Business and occupation taxes, as more businesses come here, we have seen a bump in business license revenue, basically. A couple of other things to highlight on here, investment income. So we have taken advantage of some of the higher rates in the market, both with our cash at the bank as well as money market and CDs that we have invested right now. So that is why you see that jump in investment income there, as we continue to try to take advantage of that. And then the last two, hotel motel tax and the motor vehicle rental tax, continue to be strong. As you can tell, 3% increase in both of those. Working with Discover Dunwoody to kind of forecast out that's in line with what he's kind of Ray Azil is saying right now as well. So that's the total revenue picture year over year. Again, about an 8.6% increase in revenue. This year, we tried a slightly different approach with and kind of showed a pie of how the general fund operating expenses are divvied up. This first pie is by department. So police is the largest department in purple down there, 38.1%. In line with last 2025 budget. It's roughly 40% of our budget as well in 2025. So it's right in line with that. If you take our four largest departments, IT, police, public works, and parks, they're 68.9% of the total budget. Debt service is 3.6%, and then capital and one-time expenditures are 1.5%. So the remaining departments are 26% after that. So a lot of these are very consistent with where they were for the 2025 budget with some slight changes, but for the most part, very consistent with the 2025 budget. One more view is by category. So this is taking the general fund, not by department, but by personnel services, professional services, things of that nature. So the city personnel cost is that blue, more than half of the pie. That's 55% of the budget. This orange sliver down there to the left is official admin services. That's our contract positions. That's 7% of the budget. So if you add those two together and consider that our total personnel / people cost, it's 62% of our budget. Some other things to note on here, property and liability insurance is 2% of our budget, and debt service is 4% of our budget. So 6%, those two combined are 6%. And that leaves roughly $11.6 million or 31% of the budget that fits into all the other categories, so to speak. So again, that's on a very high level is the categories. And that is, those are the very, very high level slides I had for operating for the general fund. So I can pause here and ask questions about operating or answer any questions you have about operating, or we can continue through the presentation if you want to go through the capital stuff as well.
Now let's, because the next section is capital.
Correct.
Okay, so let's pause here for questions.
Sure.
Go ahead, Rob.
One kind of question just in looking at this, your projection of investment income.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a very big number, but does that presume a usage of some of the excess fund balance?
Correct. So right now we are investing that, yes, in CDs and money markets. Yes.
So if we, as a side discussion, decide to do something with some of that excess fund balance, that could affect that number as well.
There is the potential.
All right,
yes,
I just want to make
yes.
sure I understand that. Thank you.
My questions might be for Jay as much as anything else. So in Georgia, when a residential property sells, I think the law is that it's to reassess at that value the first year, right?
You are correct.
Okay, is the same true of commercial properties?
Yes.
So are there any checks and balances? Do you find that the tax assessor's office is pretty efficient with that?
There are, okay, to give the full thing,
Right.
the Department of Revenue also works hand in hand with local county tax assessors' offices. So there is review process during it. For instance, DeKalb's, and I am 6 or 7 years removed there, but the same staff is there with Calvin Hicks. Almost every year he would produce his methodology of assessments. And when you get to a county as large as DeKalb, 700,000 citizens gives you quite a bit of property. So there is more math involved than individual house looking at. So you've got two different things in play. One, their actual assessments are reviewed throughout the process and examined. And also the appeals process works as the best check and balances you can ever have on a system, because individual residential homeowners can check against it. And also commercial properties, who I will just bluntly say are lawyered up to do so, will also challenge assessment value. So even though it's not a perfect science, and valuing a property that has not sold recently is not, there is a system in there to make sure that things are as accurate as they can be. However, things will be inaccurate at times.
Okay, so as an example, an apartment complex in Perimeter just sold for $77 million, which was, I think, a $12 or $14 million increase from the last time it sold. Does someone go and check and make sure that the assessment has changed?
That will happen during their regular process.
It's automatic.
They have a separate commercial division.
Okay,
And on something like an apartment complex, just to also give word of warning, the prices that are in stories are not always accurate themselves. But during that process, they know it's changed hands. It will be looked at, yes.
Okay, same thing for strip shopping centers, pretty much for everything. Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else? Pretty straightforward. Nobody has any other questions? Okay. Next, Richard, you can come back then.
Richard and I were kind of debating which one should start off this next part.
Okay,
And we just made the executive decision. I guess it'll be me. Coin flip.
okay.
Okay. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we're going into the capital discussion for this is look at a little way the current capital pie is sliced up for 2026. And that's what you see before you. Basically, we have certain funds which are capital driven. In some instances, people think the capital fund is, and that makes sense. But also the two SPLOST funds we have, along with the hotel motel fund, do capital spending. So when we look at what the city council is already looking at for their proposed budget, this is how it breaks out. What we'd like to do is emphasize where the money already is in 2026. Your biggest two shares are on here are SPLOST 1 and SPLOST 2 for public works. Now, as you go through these, you notice SPLOST 1 is a little bit lower. That will be whittled down over the next couple of years, and SPLOST 2 will grow. These are all of the different associated projects that are limited by that fund. Remember, SPLOST can only be used for certain things. The next one you have is the general fund part, which is primarily with parks with the Brook Run maintenance facility in there. And then all of the other ones are smaller slivers of the pie, but we'd like to show what we also spend SPLOST on. SPLOST is also spent on public safety. It's also spent in SPLOST 2. We can actually do park construction. Previously under SPLOST 1, sarcastically, it was called baby SPLOST. It wasn't allowed to give DeKalb full reign to spend it on that all other counties were. Parks were actually prohibited for new construction, but in SPLOST 2, it's big boy SPLOST, and now parks can be part of that. We can also repair items with it, but just to make sure that you understand, it's not for just the little bit of paint on the wall. These are from major capital constructions on it. Also look at a little bit within the general part of it. There's a little bit of public works, a little bit of IT. Those are smaller amounts that we spend throughout the year. Now with that, now we're going to get to, I want to back up 2 slides. The next part of the discussion is this part off the general fund, the amount of fund balance remaining. It is perfectly appropriate for the council to take that fund, look at the possible excess at the end, and remember, this is a projection, and to talk about that part of the pie. Look at that and say, here are things to invest in, because when you invest your overage in fund balance above the 6-month part, you're investing in capital. That is considered an appropriate use of fund balance above your minimum threshold. It doesn't continue operating expenses. What it does is it constructs assets for the city to work into. And that's what we're getting into today. So the fund balance projected above 6 months is 11.2 million. So that's, if you want to, is looking at what is available. And with that, Mayor, I'm not sure if you want to get into
I
your
do.
part.
I just
With
want
that,
to talk a little bit about, not necessarily, I mean, we can talk about my recommendations in a minute, but I want to talk about where we are fiscally as a city and where we've come from, and what we went through. So when I became mayor, we had the equivalent of about 7 months of reserves. When you look back historically, though, the charter, and so I went through over the last few days and read through the budget documents pretty much since we became a city. And though we talked about 4 months in the charter, once we were able to accrue some funds, it was often 6 months. And so we, that wasn't so uncommon. And one, it was, there was, that's what they were doing, but it was very common to take above that, or even before the city had 6 months in reserves, way back at the beginning, they would spend, they would save for we would save for capital projects through our operating budget revenues, and then we would build them. And that was pretty common. So I became mayor. 10 weeks later, the pandemic happened. Financial security seemed like a fantasy at that point. We were so unsure. We had so much uncertainty about what was going to happen. 70% of Dunwoody's property taxes come from the commercial district at this point. And so I rein things in. I'm like, we're going to be very careful. We're not going to overspend. We're going to do what we can. So now we've had several positive years, none quite as positive as last year, where I'm more comfortable. And also I believe we should return this money should be spent to benefit the people that paid it. Do I want to spend it all? No. Am I comfortable going below 6 months? No. I think we've had a couple of good years. Each year has gotten better, but I think that my preference also with so much uncertainty in operating spending, might happen over, we're fine for next year. Like we've built a budget that works, but I'm comfortable with a cushion large enough to hold us should a crisis happen. That's what happens when you're a mayor in a crisis. And so I think 6 to 7, I think that my recommendation strikes not necessarily the specifics, but how much I'm comfortable spending is what you see in front of you. Am I committed to the specifics? Those were just what I thought. Those are just my priorities, but that leaves us, I think I lost my slideshow too. Hold on 1 second. I think I ended up 7 million was what I recommended. And that would leave us, sorry, math.
About 4 or 5 million.
Above 4
6 months.
months, above 6 months.
6 months.
Right. So really, it would take us down to about 7.5 months, which is where we were when I started. So I'm okay with that for now. And as we know, the budgets can be amended through the year. We're also not voting on anything today, but that is my perspective. And so that's where my head is. This is the mayor's budget, but obviously I'm, 1/7 of this body. So, okay, that's me. Go ahead, Stacy. Oh, I thought you were. Okay, anybody? So how would we like to dive into this capital discussion? We'd like to talk about my recommendations first. Would we like to talk about Homecoming Park or the parks? But, John.
All right, Madam Mayor, you, I guess are recommending that we spend $7 million and the 6 month would be more like 11 million. Is that right? Are we talking about the same numbers? Does that sound right? So it's somewhere in that frame, somewhere between 7 and
It-
11. And you,
It would take us down to a 7.5 month reserve,
okay.
which,
I'm
ahead.
good with the starting point. I just have questions. For example, the ambulance is not in the budget.
right.
So
Oh,
in other
yeah.
words, I want to make sure that we have 600,000
Right.
or $1 million set aside for the ambulance.
Yes.
Because I don't know what's happening there. I believe you can fill us in, but I believe that
can.
we are looking at DeKalb County. They're coming up with recommendations where it's not in the current budget. But that being said, we have the ambulance until December.
So we have it till December. It's a month-to-month contract and they will continue. Eric, is that correct? I mean, we don't have to tell them ahead of time.
That's
Right. So I did a little slides. Can I share my screen? Is that at all possible or too complicated?
But I guess the point is I'd like to save
Right.
$1 million for the ambulance if we need it.
Yes.
I mean, so that's on top of your 7, I guess.
Yes, that would allow. Well, my recommendation was 7, right? Oh, yeah. So, yes. And if we can, I did some slides on.
And then
feet
if I
fire.
could just a couple other
Yes,
things I
go
want to
ahead.
make sure we save money for.
Okay,
If, let's say a piece of property, let's say the federal government decides that they want to sell the post office in Dunwoody
Mm.
Village. How much does the post office cost? I want to make sure that we have a reserve
Hmm.
to purchase that post office if so needed. I don't know how much that would cost. I don't know what the estimates are. Land, property, values, I'm guessing $2 million.
Hmm.
So in other words, I'd like to take 2 million of the reserves of, let's say, the 11,
Mhm.
push that over to a side for future capital someday in case the post office were to come available and we could buy that as a city
Yeah.
as improving the village. And then finally, I want to make sure that we have worst case scenarios for public safety.
Mhm.
We have Chatcom. We share Chatcom with others municipalities. We are just a tenant. We do not control Chatcom. We do not control 911. Chief Carlson, if Chatcom were to decide today that they wanted to squeeze in a little bit and just be Sandy Springs and Johns Creek, or just be Sandy Springs, if whoever the controlling, members are, if they decided to no longer offer 911 services for the city of Dunwoody, again, don't know if that would ever happen, but if it were to happen, what would be the ramp up? How much money would we need? What would be the time frame to switch it to do it ourselves, to partner with another municipality? How much money would we need reserved for worst case scenario for public safety in the case of 911?
I'd have to get you exact figures. I'm not exact. I know we use our 911 funds now for Chatcom 911.
Right.
Eric and I have talked in the past about partnering with Chamblee. They do have their own 911 center as well as their own dispatch center as well. I didn't receive any pushback from them. Right now, Chatcom exceeds my expectations. They're doing a phenomenal job. They provide us the great service that we
Agreed.
need here for Dunwoody.
Agreed. No disagreement.
And we could always fall back onto cab. I'd have to do the research on what it would take to get 2 additional consoles. If we were to partner with Chamblee, 2 additional consoles, we would have to, for their city, they provide 10 staff members for their 911 and the dispatch. So we'd probably have to mirror that. So that would have to add up personnel costs, what it would do to the console.
Well, basically, it's a chunk of money.
It is a chunk of money. Yes, sir.
And if it were to happen, I'm guessing Chatcom would give us 6 months leeway,
Yes, sir.
which may or may not be enough time to adjust the budget appropriately for the several $1 million that we may need someday, worst case scenario for public safety, if Chatcom were to kick us to the curb. Not that it's ever going to happen, but just FYI. So I kind of want to make sure that we have a pot of money on top of your $7 million for
Right.
that as well.
Yeah, that's my thinking too.
Can I
Okay.
add something? real
Sure,
quick
by all
with that? So, we do have a separate E911 fund for
Yeah.
that.
That's
that would
operational.
collect
That's
all the-
everyday stuff, right?
Yes, well, if we directed that revenue to us instead of Chatcom, we currently have a fund balance in there. We finished 2024 with $1.7 million and we continue to add to it. So that would be available if Chatcom pulled out. That would be available for us to go establish our whatever is necessary. Would it be enough? We'll have to go do some research on it, but that is available to establish our own.
That
E911
raises some
service,
interesting
so-
questions. I was unaware of that. And what
Mhm.
is that being saved for? What's the anticipated use of those fund balances in the future in the sense of the 911?
Let me elaborate, Jay, hang on a second. Let me elaborate on this. All right, so first of all, I want to back up on the 911. All right, so staff, on these 3 topics you brought up, John, the staff is constantly working on strategic plans for what if scenarios. So one thing is, and we've asked ourselves that same question you did on Chapcom, where we are a subscriber. It's owned by Johns Creek and Sandy Springs. They own it. We subscribe with Brookhaven. So from that standpoint, the money though that we have set aside, we collect fees based on the user fees for 911. And we all pay that as part of our phone. And one thing that there was an audit done several years ago to ensure that people in Dunwoody, that we get that money. Because we want to be sure if somebody lives in Dunwoody, they're not paying fees in another jurisdiction based on where they got their phone. So that's been really tightened down. So we spend our money, we are self-sufficient in terms of using those fees for Chatcom. We have a surplus of money there, but of course that's going to be renegotiated with Chatcom. We always worry that they're going to go up astronomically on us. Fortunately for us, of the cities that subscribe, we've become a less demanding city for Chatcom. Brookhaven has gone over and beyond the number of calls in their city than what we have here. So that's how the fees are associated. So the newest numbers that we got from them are pretty stable. But we do want to have that in reserve, the 1.5 million. If we did want to do our own by force, in other words, Chatcom says, hey, we're not doing it anymore, or do we want to do our own version of a private system with another city? Those take time. They're complicated systems. We have to get with the other jurisdictions, talk to their council members who run it. Also, those are departments. So if you went with another city, we're looking at a department that's run by a city, it'd be like us running, and somebody else wants to make an authority. I'm insistent that it be an authority because I want a full seat at the table, not a subscription, if we do make a move one day. So those monies are set aside for that. When it comes to something like the other 2 items you mentioned, the ambulance piece, y'all have got to navigate that. and see what you want to do. As y'all have seen, there have been improvements made through DeKalb County, and with the new CEO have made various improvements to the fire system. The county is now subsidizing that system, which they weren't doing for the past decade. So now that's being subsidized. So y'all have to make it's what I'm gonna call a gut check on what you want to do for that ambulance or not. And if you want to have that extra service, we've heard different things from the fire department that they feel confident they can absorb our same level of service without that ambulance, but that's a mystery. We don't know 100%. The other piece is, and I don't want, without getting into any kind of real estate, things like that and all, but the numbers that were mentioned for like the post office you mentioned, that's too low, based on the numbers that we have. If and when, I hope when is what I hope, that ever becomes available, it is something that we could certainly look at, or at least somebody in the community would redevelop that to a favor of the village. Of course, as we all know, is something the council's put a lot of time, energy, effort, planning, thoughts, and everything else into. And that is one piece there that we would like to see. It's basically, it's expired. Its time has come and gone. We need something else in the village to revitalize that part of the city. We would love for that, whether it goes to us or whether it goes to a private person, but either way, be redeveloped into a viable use. I just wanted to put those things in there. And I believe, Mayor, they're working on getting your computer where you can show stuff.
Eric, you said my numbers were low on the post office. What do you mean by that?
It would cost more to
Okay.
buy it than that.
Okay.
So it would be a negotiation.
It would be a negotiation.
And
but I
there
think
was
that's
a
still too low.
time where when the post office tried to close way back when we might have been able to get it for free.
Mm.
And
You never
a few
know.
You never
Yeah,
know. That
right.
was before,
Right.
right at the edge of cityhood. I can't remember exactly the timing, but Senator Isaacson intervened because people were worried about not having a post office. And he said we could never come back to him for any help with the post office again. And that's what he told the community.
Well, we won.
So
He's gone.
he's gone, right? Unfortunately, he was a good guy. But anyway, so I'm not unhopeful that we couldn't get a big discount if we could just get someone's attention to figure out how to make it happen. It's not something, I mean, we work on it, and it turns out so are a lot of other cities in Georgia. Their post offices are in the wrong place too. And so we are not the only asking, but I tend to be try to be the loudest voice in the room about it. Okay, if you'll scroll down, keep going.
You go to your presentation.
Yeah, my presentations. It's my presentation. Yes. If you go down a few more slides. I don't understand. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. That one. No, keep going right there. EMS. Can you make it a full screen by any chance? Okay. So I did this for a presentation last night. You've seen some of these numbers. You maybe not consolidate it like this. So where DeKalb is right now and why they're optimistic is the next page, but our response times are down. Our complaints are way down, and 2 of the last 3 complaints I've had, which have been fairly spread out. One was a 911 issue. 2 were really 911 issues. One was a coding issue at 911. None, and the third call, frankly, worked the way it was supposed to in a lot of ways. So where DeKalb is, go to the next page, please. Where DeKalb is that for years, as you all are aware, we have been advocating for a change to the EMS system. When this started, before most of you were on council, there was the people leading it, the person leading it thought we could get our own ambulance system. That is really not possible under state law right now. So when I started working on this in earnest, as COVID eased it's been more than a couple of years now, I worked with the Georgia Municipal Association because when we started working on this in say 17, I would represent Mayor Shortle at DeKalb County mayor meetings, and I couldn't get any other mayor to agree this was a problem. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, not just the DeKalb mayors, but mayors across the state were concerned about EMS response times. It was a big shift. So the Georgia Municipal Association Legislative Policy Committee, which I'm on, we took it up. We drafted legislation that would have allowed cities to have their own ambulances. There were different versions of it. It's very clear that the governor does not support this, and there's a real reason why, which is that in DeKalb, every city could choose to have its own ambulance, and it would leave 400,000 people in the unincorporated part of the county, which would be enough for an ambulance company to want the business. Outside of Metro Atlanta, there are lots of places where the cities are the entire population or a huge chunk of the population, and the rural population is small and scattered. And so the fear is that if city X and county Y took their EMS services, just for their city, there wouldn't be a company willing to pick up. And in many cases outside of the metro counties, they have the service delivery is through private, so local hospitals, which are closing. There's different entities that are doing it. And while we have what is called a wall time, which is when our EMS vehicles arrive at a hospital, how long it takes for the patient to be turned over to the hospital, of about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes in DeKalb County. That's their average. I know mayors where it's 6 hours. And so the governor's fix, which actually didn't happen, his proposed fix was to give money to the more rural areas. There was a bill dropped a couple of years ago that would have just applied to Fulton based on the way it was written. That didn't go anywhere. So I have been pretty laser focused on DeKalb and what they can do. A few years ago, I sent a letter to DeKalb County because they kept asking me what I wanted them to do. And one of the things I wanted them to do was to subsidize the service. So Gwinnett and Clayton are still paying, they still operate EMS out of their fire departments, which cost a lot more than the model that DeKalb wasn't paying anything. And there's just no way, and the deal never made sense to me. But so I couldn't get the CEO at the time, Michael Thurman, to move on the money, but the Public Safety Committee of the County Commission did. They heard what we were saying and they started, they worked with AMR and they started subsidizing the service, which makes sense because it's a public service and you'll get a bill. And if you have insurance, if you've had an ambulance ride lately, it's very expensive. Right now, Medicaid and Medicare actually reimburse better than most private insurance companies. So the model that AMR had agreed to wasn't financially feasible and they weren't providing enough service. The contract that DeKalb County had with AMR was not adequate either. So they updated the agreement. Now they're subsidizing it to tune about $5 million, which in that agreement, there's financial penalties if they don't do the following things: increase the number of staff, increase the number of ambulances that are on the road at any given time, and increase the number of hours that those ambulances are working. And so DeKalb, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric or Chief, DeKalb is arguing that these changes are why we see the number of calls being answered by our ambulance. And these numbers, in case people miss it, are for a week. I just grabbed random reports for a week, just whichever one popped up in my email, is why they're answering fewer calls because there's more ambulances on the road. They've also been working with the hospitals. Have gotten wall time down to a little bit less than an hour, which is an improvement. And then one of my other suggestions, which I don't know if they did this because I suggested it is they've set up, one of my suggestions way back a few years ago was you ought to have a strategy for the long-term care facilities and the retirement communities where you're getting a lot of calls. Are there facilities that it's so many calls that you ought to staff somebody there? And so they have a special team now that works with those. I'm guessing to it says to reduce preventable use. And then they have a nurse navigator. So, and this nurse navigator, you call and you say, I've hurt my arm and I don't have a way to get to the hospital. They can arrange, I believe, an Uber now, but they can also make you a doctor's appointment. So if transportation isn't your issue, but you don't have a doctor, they can make you a doctor's appointment, and they are working. I don't know if it's just a cab or across the state. They're working right now. Ambulances can't take you to urgent care. So, they're working on different solutions. As well as we have done some education, I believe, and the county's doing education on when to call 911 and when not to, which I don't know if that's helping or not. And the other thing they're doing is a few years ago, DeKalb started buying what's called rapid response vehicles that they're gonna put at their fire departments, which they're staffed with an EMT or a paramedic, but they don't transport. And so they can arrive on the scene, and you had that experience. So Stacy, when she was was it camp or it was class, when she was teaching gymnastics, coaching gymnastics at the JCC, had a child with a very bad break. And the first on the scene was one of these rapid response vehicles. But the county has had trouble staffing them, right, Eric? Correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but it's getting better. Their staffing is getting better at the county. And then, so their staffing is getting better at the county, but also AMR is going to have a few of these vehicles as well, which they are contractually required to staff. And in the 3 complaints that I've had over the last however many months, the first 2 the first one, she just needed help getting her mother up. And there was no injury, so it was coded as very low priority. But if they had a person with a truck, it would have been handled in 10 minutes. The person would have gotten there, helped the mother into the car. I think they had a doctor's appointment or something. And so the 2 of the 3 calls, the person wasn't even transported. The second call, she didn't want to go to the hospital. They checked her out. In that case, dispatched the ambulance from too far away. And then the third call was a really serious call. However, it worked the way it was supposed to. Fire arrived on the scene. It was a heart attack. And on every fire truck in DeKalb is an EMT or a paramedic. So they began to administer, first of all, somebody in the public stepped up and was doing it. And then the fire department personnel took over, and then the ambulance arrived, and then they transported that person, but the treatment had begun. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and we would have to do a much deeper analysis. Well, there's a couple of things. One is that I've asked Eric, and he's begun the conversations to look at what they're charging us, because if there's a reimbursement benefit that we're not seeing in that $600,000, we ought to see it. And then an analysis of the hours. So they're here for 12 hours. Are there blocks of hour that they really aren't doing anything, and we could shorten it because we have flexibility in that contract? And continue to look at the data. DeKalb County they did an RFQP qualifications. They had 4 responses. Their decision is due by the end of the year. AMR's contract goes 6 months past that. AMR is one of the applicants. There's several. One of the things that I'm concerned about is what the new contract's going to look like and what that means for us and service delivery. And so I'm with John. I should have said that. The money's there. It's part of the reason I don't want to spend every cent above anything, is because there's too much uncertainty around this. If we believe we need to continue this, which totally could be the answer, we need a community discussion about public safety and what that looks like. And because this from my perspective, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but from my perspective, the long-term solution to EMS is to control our fire department. To control the fire department, because in DeKalb, so my friends who are mayors that have fire departments, they don't get ambulances, but their dispatch can always dispatch, assuming it's available, a fire truck. And at least one of my mayor friends, they bought early in the pandemic their own rapid response vehicles. So they can't transport unless someone's dying, but in Georgia, but they can send the vehicle. And so I think if we don't continue to see an improvement, or we see the opposite of an improvement, then I think it's a conversation the community we should start to engage in as a community, is where does this fall in our priorities? What is it that we need to do to assure? But overall, I think we've seen an improvement with DeKalb. The question is it sustainable? And I think that's the last slide on this. And I'll take any, and we continually get defeated at the zone. I mean, continually get defeated. They're just, and one of the challenges, which I learned way too late in this process, because someone in leadership finally said to me that the numbers that we've been asking DeKalb to meet, nobody in the state is meeting those numbers, and they would never make DeKalb meet those numbers. But that's not why we're losing. It's because they think DeKalb is improving. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it sounds interesting that DeKalb is making improvements, but I want to make sure that they are making those improvements. When you say those rapid response vehicles, how many have they already purchased, and are they already stationed at the houses?
So
I mean, if they
they
have
purchased
manpower,
a
but
bunch. So I don't know how, that's one of the things that Eric has been talking to them about, is not only your question, but can they guarantee that one will be here? Because DeKalb would like us to move away from this model. And Eric is saying, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but can you guarantee that one of these rapid response vehicles will be stationed in Dunwoody? And I don't think you've gotten an answer yet.
That's correct. And what we have, they basically have, their goal, I think, was to have 1/3, have one of those at 1/3 of their stations, and that's what we have.
so
There's
not
one
every,
here.
just the one.
There's one, but I mean, and we kind of judge it, we see it, because most of that equipment has to run by City Hall. My office faces Ashford Dunwoody Road. So you'll see the unit rolling, and you'll see that a fire truck may go out, and a few minutes later it comes back. That was a call that the rapid response vehicle could go on. We love seeing it. It is out there, but it's not out there as much as it should be. And that to us is a big part of the solution. Part of the thing too, going back to AMR's discussion, what the mayor was saying with them is, they've made big strides. And so there's a big nervousness as far as who the county is going to pick. We have zero control over
Right.
that. There's 4 people by the end of the year that are supposed to make a decision. I got word the other day, I don't know that they're going to have that decision made by then. So it really just delays it. And if we had to start over with a new company, then you have to start that whole relationship over again. We as a city have a good relationship with AMR, because they control the one ambulance that we have here. And we have their lobbyists talk to us to try to find out what are the needs, where are the numbers, what are y'all hearing, what are you sensitive about? So we have those conversations. The mayor's talked a lot. I've talked to him a lot. So going back, I still feel that rapid response type vehicle, whether AMR controls it or DeKalb controls it, is a huge solution, because not that many people get transported.
Right, it's about 50%. So I wanted, to your point, Sandy Springs, which has their own fire department, they have added at their own expense a rapid response vehicle. And I have wondered if that wouldn't be a compromise for us. Like, and we'd have to really research it, because we don't have our own fire department. But if we could, so early in the pandemic, I did say to someone in DeKalb, what if we bought our own rapid response vehicle and you just staffed it? And I don't think I think I threw it out there and they just ignored me. But I think that it's a conversation. I think we have to, if this is a long-term need, we have to figure out what the best solution is in terms of how we not only but just in general, would a rapid response vehicle that was our ask is that they keep one here all the time. I think it's a third, and then he wants to do a third. I think his goal is to get one at every fire station.
No, that's correct, Mayor. And if you want to elaborate just a moment
Yeah.
on the rapid response and also the ambulance that AMR and / DeKalb County that we pay for. Part of those rates, and what the mayor mentioned earlier, was we're trying to negotiate what would be the new rate for under the new contract. I was told the other day by an AMR person that it's like everything, it's probably gonna go up, which is tragic for us because the hourly rate that we're paying is really designed for, say, I need an ambulance for a football game, or I need an ambulance for a special event. You know, we want an ambulance station for lemonade days. So you pay this rate, right? But you're only paying it for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever you need. We're paying it 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's a very high rate. And to the mayor's point, I'm sure there's a recuperation rate on that we're not seeing. In other words, that ambulance is getting repaid. Part of what we need, and then what the mayor's driving some here, is if we paid for a rapid response vehicle, is that the majority of what we need in terms of that service? Does it provide enough? Because remember, the people on there, it's just like an ambulance in terms of what they can do. They just can't transport. The whole goal with a patient is to stabilize the patient. You know, if any one of us had an event right now, they're going to stabilize us right here. They just don't throw us in the back of the ambulance like on TV. You know, they kind of stabilize us, make sure we're good. There's communication that's occurring, and then they take us in. Unfortunately, the bad incidences that we've seen in the city have always been there was just nobody coming, not a rapid response, not anything. But that's my 2 cents.
So I'm gonna, in my experience with the rapid response, it was the first one on the scene. It was a horrible break. Can't ever unsee that arm. The rapid response person was unable to provide pain medication, pain relief until the ambulance was on the way. They were not allowed to do that because they had to have transport available. So my question, as we're going down this path, is it really the same?
Well, I'll say it's not exactly the same, but part of the problem with that one was the system's broken. In other words, the ambulance, I mean, there's been a verified issue. You know, the person has a broken arm, they need transport, they need medication, they need this, they need that. And in that case, I believe it was a minor, so there was even more complications. It wasn't an adult.
No, well, the parents were there,
Oh, they were
and
there
the
then,
parents
okay.
were asking for transport because
Fair.
they weren't quite sure that the child would,
Make it
that
safely.
she would
Not
that
get
she would not
worse.
pass out from the pain.
So-
So the guy was there waiting
Yes,
to be
understood.
told that there's transport en route. And as soon as he found that there's transport en route, he could give the pain medication. So when we talk about, you know, being able to stabilize, I just want to make sure that it's doing what we think it
And
can do.
it's contingent on, so when that happened, things were really bad. Like that was a few years ago and things were really bad. DeKalb would argue that things were improving and things have really improved because now they have more ambulances on the road and they have more hours. They're changing their model, they're whatever, recruiting better. They would argue that they wouldn't have it. And as I reminded people last night, when we started this conversation 7 or 8 years ago, we started it because, as Eric just said, ambulances weren't EMS wasn't showing up. Like we had calls and they were not showing up. So that has improved based on the lack of complaints. And DeKalb is arguing that they're putting in a system that would keep that from happening again. And so I think what we need to do in the last quarter of the year is we need to do much more analysis about the calls that they are answering, like not just the calls that they're answering, but what other calls are coming in Dunwoody. So if there were 64 calls in one for medical, 911 calls for medical in Dunwoody in a week and whatever, and how many were transported, you know, how many were level 1 trauma, how many were level 2 and 3 trauma, how many weren't transported, so we can understand what the demand is in a 24-hour period and what kind of response time we're getting on those calls. I think if you, in DeKalb, I cannot prove it. I want to be clear because we are focused very much on the most serious calls with the data we receive. I think if you call in and you have a minor issue, you're still going to wait. And so depending on what else is happening.
I will say, so my other job, I did have to call 911 at this summer for a but it was a minor injury, but our protocol said that I had to call 911 and I got transferred over to the nurse line. And that actually was very helpful and very seamless. And that's a DeKalb County thing, but it was what we needed at the time.
And I have a question, if you don't mind, John,
Go ahead.
about the E911 extra funds, which is, I don't know that Chatcom has put a nurse navigator on staff.
That's something we're constantly working with, and I think that Chief Carlson may have an answer, an update on that, because we've asked them to do that. If
Right.
not, can they get them over to the DeKalb, just like a fire, it's in
Right.
the DeKalb, can we not get the DeKalb?
Well, who dispatches
Person.
ambulances for us? 911,
No, it goes-
Chatcom or
And it goes to
DeKalb?
DeKalb.
Right.
Well,
It's a
both.
transfer. to
Right.
DeKalb.
Right.
Right, okay.
So Chief,
Yeah,
you want to talk about the
right.
nurse navigator?
Yeah, we do not have it at Chatcom.
They're working on it,
They're
right?
working on it, yes, but as of right now, we do not have it on there.
Right, so what could we use with the E911 money? What are the allowed uses, Jay?
First off, I'd like to have us sit down and make sure we
Okay.
comb through them. Generally, it has to tie to E911, the nurse navigator part is one of those that's the gray area that could evolve into that. I don't want to do that without actually having.
But I'm not sure we want Chatcoms. So what's happening in DeKalb when it call transfers, is it just to, we worked on this forever. Is it just to a 911, is it to a regular 911 operator or is it to a fire EMS operator?
So the call will come into Chatcom once they
Right.
determine that it goes, that it's DeKalb Fire.
Right, they push a button.
They push a button and transfers over to DeKalb 911.
And so it's just a 911 operator. So in theory, a Chatcom operator should be able to make a determination. I can send it to our nurse navigator or I can send it to DeKalb, which may or may not. It, like you said, it helps the people that nurse navigators can be really helpful. Tom,
Yeah, why would the cab system not transfer a call from Dunwoody to the nurse navigator system? Because that's there to provide efficiencies
No,
for
they
the EMS system. Those same efficiencies would be, so would a call that was transferred to an EMS call that was appropriate for a nurse navigator not go to a nurse navigator if it was originated in Dunwoody?
Johns Creek has their own fire department as well. So I think that's why they were going to have that nurse navigator at Chatcom. So if it's a medical call, this is my understanding, is that'll go to that nurse navigator. And if it's going to be out of their hands, then they'll push the button over to DeKalb if it's going to require further service.
But when DeKalb receives the call, if it was appropriate for it to be handled by a nurse navigator, would they not dispatch it that way? Or would they just, how would DeKalb handle that call? Why would DeKalb not send a call from Dunwoody to a nurse navigator?
I'm sorry, Tom, I'm not tracking you, sir. So
I don't know that we know that answer. So,
Yeah.
So the nurse navigator is there to.
the extra step is causing time.
And that's a question, and I've actually asked Chief Fulham about it, and I sent him another backup reminder email just to get an answer on that. It's a great question. I don't understand the answer to it because I don't know why the call comes in, we any of us call 911, goes to Chatcom. If it's a fire, it's a one button transfer, which, that's something that we put in, and we put a lot of investment in there to work with 911 and Chatcom. And that was a Dunwoody exclusive to start with. One button transfer, it goes over to there. I don't know why at that point, because they have to triage it as well. Our people ask a few questions and then it goes over there. And there's a little bit of, competitiveness, I guess you could say, in a way between the DeKalb 911 and Chatcom in terms of how the calls are taken. Because sometimes whenever there's an issue, the first thing we look at is, was it Chatcom's fault? Was it DeKalb 911's fault? Where did the breakdown occur? Or was it the caller? And it goes back to what the mayor said earlier. It's the education level also on the caller. How do you do 911? They're going to ask your name twice. They're going to ask your address twice. All this information, it takes time, but please follow the prompts because it's quicker if you just do what they ask to do. But having said that, I'm going to get an answer to that because that question's worried me for some time.
Yeah, because if EMS is if DeKalb is providing our EMS service and this is a part of their response for EMS, we should be getting 100% of the service that the rest of the county is getting. There shouldn't be a difference, and there should be an easy way. The same with fire with a one button. Whether it's Chatcom that makes the call to put it directly to the nurse navigator, or if DeKalb, there shouldn't be a disconnect there, in my opinion.
No, you're right. I don't even want to speculate, but I think it maybe is a call management situation where they've already talked to one operator, so they get to the second operator into cab. I don't know. I'm not gonna guess. Eric will find out. Go ahead, Rob.
So I'm gonna, I guess, take a step back because I feel like we're really getting into the weeds here. So we're looking at the budget
Right,
and we have the budget and then we're having a kind of an additional discussion about we have got a lot of surplus.
right.
And so we have a ambulance situation with lots of questions and
Mhm.
confusion and possibly lots of improvements. And so I'm just gonna circle back to John's point. Why don't we set aside some money? Clearly, there's lots of discussion, lots of number crunching, lots of analysis that needs to happen to figure out what we need to do in the future. And then just move on to the next topic.
That's fine. I think we put aside $1 million.
I do have one
Go
more
ahead.
question,
That's
if you don't
fine.
mind. Eric, so it's already been discussed that there are 4 companies bidding on the services for DeKalb. Currently, AMR provides the services and our supplemental is provided by AMR. If DeKalb should select another vendor, first question number 1, under the current state regulations, would we still be able to hire a supplemental service through AMR? And then number 2, how would that work?
We can't, under state regulations, you cannot hire a company that doesn't have the zone.
Right.
So we would have to go with the new company. And DeKalb would have to put it in
That's
there.
right. It has to be through DeKalb because we're with DeKalb and then DeKalb allows, goes through AMR. So even though we pay directly, our agreements with DeKalb County, and then we have a
Right.
close relationship with AMR.
That's why it's like if you were having a tennis tournament and you wanted to hire an ambulance, it's the same kind of deal. It's just that we have it for every day, 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, as opposed to one tennis tournament. Joe, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor, for your PhD in this subject. I'm just listening to everything, and just a quick aside is that we're going to keep the pulse on this and continue to update council because this is a super important, great conversation to have. So it's really complicated. And a long term, if we do decide EMS, that's operating versus capital as well. So kind of a little bit where you have this greater citizen conversation too, because do we want to use one-time funding to pay for operations, or do we want to have a steady stream of cash flow to pay for that if we're going to keep those services on an annual basis? So it's just a conversation. And then the other conversation is, maybe it's not today, but it's a great conversation to have, is what do we have set aside to potentially use for this capital reserve that's not budgeted? So John alluded to purchasing land, the EMS, possible check cam. So there's always a whole different plethora of items. And we can talk about each one of those in its own subject, right? Even the city purchasing land, when they bought the PVC farm, that was a loan. We got a loan for that, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's
And
right.
at the PVC farm, we got a loan for that. When we purchased Vermac property, we got a loan for that. There are options always on the plate when opportunities arise of how we meet those needs. So, and back to I don't know where we're going to go with the rest of the day, but when you, Jay briefed the capital spending, you talked about SPLOST and hotel motel. In the CIP, it's kind of like, if we ever get to the CIP, if we also talk about there's federal dollars in there as well on some projects. So when we do, if we do talk that, if we could kind of show which ones have federal dollars versus the SPLOST versus hotel motel, whatever, okay?
You actually bring up a good point on there, because
Thanks.
one of the things the finance team did this year was on all the schedules for that, it's noted at the bottom where additional funding is tied to it.
Right, because there's some, because then we're looking at unmet projects, and then some of those might be tied to federal funding versus, right? So it just gets complicated. Thanks.
Go ahead, Ron.
Joe actually brought up a point that that led me to think of something else, which is just when we present this information to the public, SPLOST, when signing up for it is the wrong word, but we allocate by percentage how we're going to use our SPLOST funds. And we're kind of locked into that for the duration of that SPLOST. And I think that's a point worth sharing. If we decide we're using X% for paving each year, that's what percent we have to use.
You're correct. And then for ours, the biggest share was transportation, then public safety, then parks, then repairs. You're correct.
Anybody else? Okay, so part of the cushion that I think we have to leave which was a very long-winded discussion, but we needed to have the ambulance discussion anyway. and we probably, as things get settled, we probably need to bring in Chief Fulham, Eric, to do a presentation. Although I think I've summarized it pretty well. And we need to figure out where they are in their decision-making process, because that makes me really uncertain. Okay, so I'm with John on obviously I think we should have more than 6 months because of those extra things.
And Mayor, when it comes to the extension of the contract for AMR services that we're currently getting, we got to make sure that we're on point, that we don't, if we need that, I don't know what the renewal is on that. I want to make sure that if we need that on January 1st, that it continues, or if we're cutting them off on January 1st, that we're following the contract and the agreement. I want to make sure that we don't lose the ability to have that.
Yeah, my understanding is that we don't lose the ability, even if we cut it off, it could be restarted. I'd want to have more conversations with them on that, because it was a very good partnership to bring that in. You know, they put Dunwoody on it and things like that.
Right.
And so there was a lot of pride about it. And, you know, the people that are operating that ambulance, they don't understand the politics behind it. You know, they just see, hey, look, we're here to serve the public. But yes, that's a great point. And that's something I look forward to for a decision. And I think we need to have, as the mayor mentioned, have Fulham come in before the end of the year to talk a little bit more about that and ask some point questions on it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now back to capital. Go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah, I would say I'll go back to your mayor's recommendation, and I am very much in favor of kind of where you landed with the $7 million. And I would just like to point out to the public that, and to John's point, you know, we bought Homecoming Park with 0 down, and we've been paying $465,000 a year since 2021, and it's basically not usable. And I don't think that's a fair ask of our citizens any longer. So I'm very much in favor of building out Homecoming Park. We have a plan. It's been approved by council. And I would very much like to see this $5 million and the total build out for Homecoming Park being this year's budget, because it is time to just stop paying our mortgage, and it's time to have a park.
Probably could have talked about maybe where I came from with these, maybe a little bit, just quickly. So police equipment, speaking of federal money, there was a small grant that was pulled back. So there's a couple $100,000 of equipment that the federal government was gonna pay for that we need to cover. With the exception of Homecoming Park, which is a specific recommendation, my thought process is that the department heads and chief could look at their needs and bring back recommendations to us based on this budget. So my perspective is these would be, again, with the exception of Homecoming Park and police equipment, whatever, is different, would be sort of rapid rollout, I need a small amount of money to either complete the funding for this project and we can start it, or in the case of pedestrian safety, I'd like us to spend on places that are high impact, and just get it done. You know, I just want to see things get done with pedestrian safety. And so that was my vision. It's a conversation, but that was kind of my thinking on these funds and how they could be used. I have one other request, because to Stacy's point, though we're not paying for Wildcat Park, what I'd like to see us do internally, I don't want us to spend any money, is to look at the design and see if there's any way to get real bathrooms there. Like, is there any way to, because I know the current issue is that where the bathrooms are in a location that means that you can't, once you put them in, you can't really build around, you have to, whatever, you know, I'm not a visual person, so I can't even explain it. But if there's not a way to figure out a way to get permanent bathrooms there so that it is usable now and there are porta potties, but it could, and people are using it, but you might be able to have a 2-hour soccer practice if there were permanent bathrooms.
That's at Wildcat Park.
Yes, at
correct?
Wildcat.
Okay, and then the good thing is there, we have sewer at that location because the school was
Yeah,
there. So
right.
that should be fairly easy. We will
Well, it
certainly
was
look
the
at that.
the design has the location of them. So if there's any way to, you know, tinker with the location of those bathrooms, so that we can go ahead and do the bathrooms are not that expensive.
We'll look at that.
So
100%.
that it can be usable. You know, I know that for my friends who walk in, like from John's neighborhood through the park every day, or from my neighborhood the other direction, they love the fact that there are bathrooms along the route. It's a game changer for how long they can be out. And so if we could get, and I'm sure they use porta potties if they're desperate, but if we could get permanent bathrooms at Wildcat Park, it probably would increase. And yes, and a water, well, the water fountain goes on the outside of the bathrooms, right? Yeah. Okay, Rob, go ahead.
I have, I guess, two items. One is just a procedural question. Is the thought that what we do or don't do with budget surplus be linked with this budget process or work in parallel with it? In other words, our budget is got a lot of detail. Our recommendations here are a little bit loose. Do we think we can get detail in time to have it with the budget?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
And then my second question is just related to Homecoming Park. My understanding now is that because of the anticipated usage, we might be able to keep septic at that park.
Yes. Well, I shouldn't answer that.
So if that's the case, there's a leach field, and does the master plan and the leach field location have just, that's gonna be something that's need to be looked at to make sure
That's
that
right.
plan was built, assuming it was gonna switch to septic, and you can't build over a leach field.
Right, and so that's something we're carefully looking at. The way that park design was, it's kind of a once and done. Once you build your master plan, you're pretty much done there. And if you ever wanted to change something down the road, you could always add sewer. We were very excited for the fact that we didn't meet with DeKalb Public Health. And they said, absolutely, that's a perfect spot for a leach field. The soils are good. We're actually doing a soil sample to make sure that it would work, because the bathrooms are very small. I mean, they're, not that many units in each bathroom. Remember, there were two houses on there. One's gonna stay, but it doesn't have any cooking going on. It doesn't have clothes that are being washed in it, stuff like that. The other house will come down. We'll put a new system in there. The leach field, yes, you cannot build on top of it. And, but it's more of something that you would do in a lot of the parks across the state where there's not sewer available anyway. So it's not an unusual
Well,
process.
I'm fine with it remaining on septic. It'll save money on the
Mhm.
build out. I just want to make sure that what we have planned
Sure,
fits with.
it will
that
work.
Site
Yes,
issue.
fair enough. Fair enough.
So to your first question about procedure, the goal would be to formalize some version of this.
This
But-
is an amendment to the proposed budget.
Right, but as a reminder, and because, and it's understandable that even I had kind of forgotten that for years before, in the years before, when we first became a city onward until COVID, we were spending the reserves on parks. Like we paid for Pernichel out of some, we did capital improvements. Sometimes we spent on extra paving. And we just haven't done that, but that's always been, but those decisions also can be made, to John's point, if something comes up through the year, it can also be made during the year. What was different for me as mayor and for y'all as council is we had a lot of federal money for a lot of years. And so the ambulance situation, for example, we managed through ARPA money. If we had wanted to do it, and we would have probably used reserves, but we didn't have to use the reserves because we had ARP money. And so that's also how come, and we were able to build, the park from CARES money, I think, no, maybe ARP money, which was totally what it was meant to be used for, both those things. But it's, so that's a difference too. But historically, we have, if I remember correctly, made changes through like for capital projects or whatever, we have taken from reserve funds to spend if needed.
It
So,
has happened in the past, yes.
yeah. Joe,
Thanks. I'll just offer again, some feedback. I appreciate having this as a conversation. Thanks. We do have, it's pedestrian safety. Potentially, we could elevate that to the road action safety plan implementation, potentially for consideration, because they've got a whole list of things where they look at crash data, high injury network, and layer that on there as well. I mean, yeah, I remember what it was in 2021, we had a pedestrian fatality on Vermac, and we're still kind of holding off on getting that fixed. So that would be one tactical question of just looking at the road action safety plan as leverage. And then just looking at the criteria. So the homecoming park is going to be a capital build out. We got to look at ongoing operating costs of what that would add to our operating budget to maintain. I'd love to see the multi-use field built out at Wildcat Park as well. I mean, that's a huge need in our community for the children of our schools. I mean, our kids, so another play field, multi-use. I don't have children, but I think it'd be beneficial. Multi-use field and maybe a covered pavilion over there at Wildcat. I definitely, everybody's asked me for restrooms at both of the places. I'm like, if you had to do anything, restrooms, please. Right. And maybe a covered pavilion and a water fountain. So I appreciate having the conversation. Thank you.
That it? Does anybody have any questions about anything with the budget? John?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I thought we were gonna go through the rest of the.
Oh, right, we are. I'm
presentation.
so sorry.
I mean, I have questions regarding.
That's fine. Yep,
police.
right, you're right. I'm sorry. I was thinking it was too short.
Before we dig back in, can I just circle back for your police equipment
Yes.
recommendation? If that's an identified need, do we want to just pull that out and vote on its
I
own?
don't, I think they are okay right now.
So it can wait. So it's
It
not
can
something
wait.
where they were expecting to buy it this year and now they can't.
It's bought. It's bought. It's
Right, so I'm
okay.
just saying
It's-
like.
It's, no, it's fine.
We can,
It's fine.
we
Because
don't
Chief
need to, we
needs
don't need
time
to tie
to,
it to the.
right. He's still time. They bought it. They own it already. So it just would, is that the, right? They're being used. It was 2 cars that were supposed to come through an EV grant. Go ahead, John.
I wasn't sure, for example, the drone conversation. We have one
Can do.
drone that is going and we had conversations
Yeah.
whether the drone, a second drone for the east side of the city was included in the budget. It's not there as far as I can
Right.
tell.
Right.
Is this money that you're thinking of, the
Do that after
500,000
this.
for the second drone? Or it's conversations that we haven't had.
Do you want to?
The slide deck, we've got public works and parks, but we don't have public
Oh,
safety
right,
unmet.
because, yeah, so go ahead and
Maybe
let
there's
Chief,
more
it's
for
not
that.
on there.
Yeah.
So, Richard, according our current drone is not in the budget for this year. However, last week I did meet with PCID and they have actually approved a 2-year program with us for the second drone to cover our side of the city where we live. So that was a very positive impact with our partnership with PCID, which was fantastic. We're also going to add a few more cameras as well, or license plate readers as well here in the PCID area.
What are we adding?
Let me elaborate on that, if I'm on, Chief. All right, so the drone system, what Chief's saying is, we lease it, right? We can't buy it. They lease it to us. And so that lease, we have one drone that's on top of this building here that we use. It stays within the range of this area because it can go all the way across the city, but it's not effective. It can't hover over there. It's got to come back for its battery. And it can replace its battery. It has all kinds of technologically advanced equipment. So PCID, having said that, has agreed to give us $200,000 for 2 years, for the next 2 years towards the drone program. But part of that is if we add a second drone. So that will have, so I've said, I don't want to get, they're paying for one, we're paying for the other. No, it's a program with 2 drones in it because I can't ask them to pay for the one that's on the other side of the city. They just put money into the system. And so from that standpoint, you got, what is it then, Chief? $400,000 a year?
Correct.
For the 2 drones, they're going to pay for half of that. We have to pay for the other half of it. And then it's a budgetary maintenance item.
So the 200,000, I'm so confused, but the second drone is not going to be here,
Right, it'll be on the other side of the city to cover the other half of the city.
but can be launched from here?
Yes.
Okay,
100%.
so I thought, and maybe I misunderstood, that we were going to see data on the effectiveness of the first drone before we committed to a second drone. Do you have that already?
Yes,
Is there data? Okay, so in the next,
Sure.
not this meeting, obviously, but at the next
Yeah.
meeting, let's see the data. Like in two weeks, let's see that if the data's
Okay.
ready.
It's ready.
Okay.
We document every.
Okay.
every time
And Mayor,
we
you
use
made
it.
a excellent point, because yes, it can be launched from here. We are radar certified now to
Mhm.
fly those, and it can be dispatched by the officer on scene from their computer. So it's a very advanced system. And we've had a great partnership with Flock, that the price, even though it's high, it's a better price than any other city has, because we are a pilot, or a showcase, I should say,
Correct.
for Flock. And they have people here every week coming through our real-time crime center and showing the drone and things of that nature. So it's something that y'all should be very proud of, that we have that capability.
And that's a significant discount. It's usually 360K per.
So it's half price almost.
Yeah, it's due to the partnerships that we have with Flock. We are, they do a lot of testing and evaluating with their new programs here. And that's why we got the drone we had it 6 months for free. And then remember, we paid 100K for the last 6 months this year. And it's because of our partnership with them that we're getting that reduced cost.
But the 200, so instead of $200,000 for one drone, now we're gonna pay $200,000 for two drones.
Correct.
And that 200,000 can be in this police equipment budget, correct? It was on a list.
Well, it's.
Right.
You approve that, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And just so, Mayor, just so the public understands, the federal government had given us a grant, part of your money there, for use for energy efficient type equipment. So we bought actually bought 3 vehicles. We bought 2 Mach-E Ford Mustangs, and we also bought a hybrid Ford Maverick. And they were, energy efficient. 2 are all electric, one's hybrid, plug-in hybrid. And then, but those, they have renegotiated, so to speak. And I think it's $116,000
Yes, sir.
that were out on there. There is no good news on that. It's all bad news. Dunwoody only had 116,000. Some jurisdictions were heavily invested in that program and are out hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're still working it. We just don't see that coming back to us. Who knows? Hopefully in the future we can get it rebated, but right now we cannot.
And is there overage in SPOS for police equipment right now, Jay? Or somebody, Richard, sorry. Like, is there unallocated SPOS? Okay.
Not really. They've got a plan to spend based on vehicle replacement and things of that nature. So not really at this
I know we're
moment.
are we just a few months into the second SPOS, or
It started collecting last year, actually,
like what?
last April.
So we're just finished the first year. So we're collections. Oh yeah, it's September. We're collections what you expected in the first year. I know I should know that because you send reports, but I can't remember.
Sure, yeah, they're right on line with what we saw
So
in
not-
one. They're not outrageously higher or anything
Okay,
like that.
it's not
but
extra
Pretty
money.
much right
Okay.
in line with SPOS one.
All right, well, we have to pay for the cars.
Well, Mayor, to your point though, that could be, like I said, it's all becomes a, how we allocate the funds. That could be paid for out of SPOST. There is money there. It has to be shifted a little bit from the other cars. You run the cars a little longer. Like we run the cars over 100,000 miles that we have now, and then we sell them. But at the same rate, that could be worked out. At the end of the day, historically, the SPOS projections in a good economy
Right.
are higher than the initial projections. When it closes out, that's the historical how it works. But you never know about the economy. You
Right.
can't predict that.
So my ask with my recommendation was that Chief just come back to us with his recommendations on how to spend it. And we don't have to approve that today. I mean, obviously, if we're gonna do the second drone, it has to come from somewhere. This is not a bad place for it to come from. So, yeah. Oh, Joe.
Just a clarification, Chief, is all right, let's not confuse. The CID is contributing 100K per year for the next 2 years for a drone.
Yes, sir.
In our current 2026 budget that we're sitting and looking at now, operating wise, do we have funding for the drone that we're currently using?
No, sir.
All right, so that's news. I'm just hearing that for the first time right now. So that's news. Okay. So we need to have a conversation about that. And I believe we should continue that. That's one part. Number two, the police, I remember I heard Anadol, you mentioned about the grant going away, federal grant for the EVs. We have some other options on the table. Can we return them? Can we sell them? What's the option if we just don't keep them, sell them on the open market, return them? What other options do we have? besides saying we have to buy them? Do we have legal
Yeah,
involved?
yeah.
What's of the other options?
We'll look at that, but on the legal part, but let me say this though, is, we own them, we bought them with our money. And we're thinking we're gonna get reimbursed. It was a reimbursement grant and they're on the street, just so you all know. One of them, the chief drives, and one is also our, is a public representative, yes, public relations person. It gets great reviews. I've seen people come up to her and say, "Oh, I love your car," because it's electric, it's unique, it's different, it's a different color. And so it does provide a lot of benefit. I'll have to say, we would have bought cars anyway. So the way I see it is we needed those vehicles. That's why I'm saying they can be paid for out of SPOS. Those are 3 vehicles that we bought. The cars they were driving, we kept, rotated them into the fleet. They're being used in other areas. So although, we could sell them, we won't get what we need for them. They've been outfitted. We'll never get that back. So it's not a good option. We can pursue, I'll talk to Ken some more about it in terms of legal, but as far as the vehicles themselves, we needed 3 vehicles and they're serving us great to this date.
Was this a direct, so now I gotta peel back the onion on getting these EVs. Was this something that the federal government gave us a legally binding document saying they were obligated to fund us?
Yeah.
And it was directly to the city, or was it through the state? Because and then,
The origin, do you remember? I mean,
It was through the Department of Energy.
Right.
So.
yeah, and so are we
were
gonna
looking at
still,
Either solar panels
are
or,
we doing any kind of class action suit? Are we pursuing this, getting it with all these other
We're
cities?
following-
$100,000.
Hey,
Email your
just saying.
senators.
that's,
This is one that we are a very, very tiny actor in a very much broader play.
Mhm. So the money could still show up, so.
so we're back to the, do we want a drone in 2026? That's a quick conversation.
So I think I'm still confused. So the drone, PCID is covering the entire cost of this drone or half the cost?
the full cost.
Okay, and so we add another drone.
Yes, ma'am.
And so potentially, but I don't think we have to decide that today because Chief is going to come back to us with his recommendations on how to spend this money, but also data on how the current drone is being used before we make a decision about, in my opinion, about a second drone. Because we don't know.
Yeah,
So-
we'll be glad to show you all that data. I mean, we feel confident that you'll enjoy
That's
seeing the
fine.
data and doing that. And part of, I think, the only the string for the PCID money was that they won't pay for one, they'll give you the money if we have 2.
Right.
Oh,
So there's
Correct.
or 0.
Correct.
Well, for there.
Well, for them.
yes.
Because we could still have one. It's whatever. Okay, so you'll work with Eric and Jay about when you're bringing this to us.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we'll talk about it specifically then. But my intention is for you to recommend, y'all need to figure out those cars, whether they come from this.
We'll
Go
figure
ahead,
that
John.
Yeah, I don't want y'all to worry about that.
Right.
We'll come up.
I'm
I want
not-
you to know about it.
It's $100,000.
Right, we'll figure it out.
And with that, the utility of it in the sense of the usefulness, the flight pattern, where you
Yes.
think it's gonna be stationed. I want to understand where it's covering. So what parts of the city are we gaining coverage on and maybe where we're not? I don't know. I just want to make sure that's all part of the conversation. I mean, I'm guessing that's going to be somewhere on the east side, maybe the annex or somewhere like that, but I need you to figure out what's best
Yes, sir.
to do coverage and explain to us the pros and cons of the program.
I'll have that put together and present it to you at next council meeting.
Much appreciated. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
I want to make sure I understand when we go forward. Thank you, Chief.
Mhm.
$7 million is what you, Mayor, think that we can use from the reserve.
That's
fund.
my comfort level.
So beyond that that leaves us with the 7.5 months. Is that correct?
Something like that. Yeah.
And then beyond that is the money that you think could be used for the ambulance.
No, the money for the ambulance is in that 7.5 months. So I might not have done the math right.
Oh, in the 7.5 months. That's what I said. That's-
So right now, if you took the 7 million I recommended, it would leave us with how many months, Jay?
He's doing the math on a
Okay,
piece of paper so
sorry.
that we're exact.
I did the math in my head, so I would say that maybe it should be fact checked.
Let me help with this also, just on a ministerial thing, is
Mhm.
part of the deal was reserving funds. Council can both appropriate, in other words, say you're going to spend it, and also reserve, in other words, hold it in fund balance so that it cannot be spent on anything else.
Mhm.
And that's not an appropriation. It would take a subsequent action of council to use it.
I thought that 6 months got us to $11 million.
But it's how much, if we spend 7 that I recommended, how much is left? Because I just did it in my head. And so,
If it's 11, then there's 4 million left, right?
Ours is about 3 million a month, something like that.
something like that.
He is doing it, so it's exact.
Again, the ambulance contract can be paid for out of the 7.5 months left. That was your theory on
Yes.
holding all that money.
Yes,
And it's like $1
absolutely.
million.
Since we don't know what
I-
situation.
Right, we
Well,
don't know.
it's
So
not 4 million.
No, I'm saying we don't know what the ambulance situation.
we don't know what the ambulance situation is gonna be. We don't know what the village property is gonna cost if we can get it. We could do that too, but then that impacts our operating budget. And there was and yeah, those were the 2 big ones, I think. Oh,
So essentially, we're saying maybe $1 million for ambulance, maybe 3 million for the post office.
maybe. What I'm saying is that my budget, what I'm presenting is what I'm comfortable with. And what I'm comfortable with is having more than 6 months of reserves because of things like the ambulance service. And also just because of the uncertainty we've had good years and then we had one really good year last year. It's not like we've had 3 really good years in a row where we can confidently say, this is what we think our revenue will be increasing by for the next whatever years. And so my comfort level, in order to be able to cover some of the things John said, plus some of the unexpected things that might happen, is to recommend to spend 7 million from the reserves today or whenever we approve the budget, and people can mix it up. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We can spend 3 on the park.
Right.
To clarify, if the 7 million is appropriated, it would
Yeah.
leave 7.3 months of reserve,
Okay.
7.3 months.
Which is how much extra cash? 7,
Uh,
sorry,
what's
4 million.
4 million or so.
Right, 4 million, okay. Above the
That
6.
leaves total reserve about 15 million.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
That's where we are.
right. 4 million is above the 6 months.
it's 4 million more than 6 months.
Right,
Is
yeah.
where what you're proposing,
Right.
Mayor.
Yes. Okay, so now I'm struggling with my agenda here, but now does Michael Smith is he next on the list?
Where do I see him? He's back there. He,
Okay, he's working.
brief interlude.
Okay,
And by the way, Mayor, just the run of show today, we do have lunch coming shortly. Once he gets here, we can have our boxes brought up for y'all. We can continue to eat at the dais here, whatever y'all prefer.
okay, we can see where we are when, yeah, we can see where we are. Yeah,
And as Mr. Smith approaches some of these items are low hanging fruit as well. I'm sure you're gonna hit that regarding the quick wins and what's, you know what I mean? You got a whole list of different things, all right? So some are very like $15,000 items. So yeah, thank you.
okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the question is can, I guess, go through these items and maybe explain what they are? Is that a good idea?
Sure, and
Is that, is council comfortable with that model? Okay,
okay. And, this obviously is not everything out of
Right.
any of our transportation plans. I just tried to I took things that were either previously identified as a priority or by the council
Right.
or a priority in a plan.
Mhm.
The first 3 are really the only intersection projects we kind of have left. I mean, there is something in the plan about doing something in Mount Vernon, Ashford, Dunwoody, but it was always a long range thing. So this is really 3 intersections that had previous recommendations to do improvements at those intersections. No design or anything's been started on any of those. Well, I take that back. Tilly Mill at Mount Vernon Place has been designed. It's basically ready for construction. There's no right of way that's required for that. It's probably about $1 million.
Yep, okay.
So there's a top three there. A much smaller thing, Womack at Leeds, warning message signs, that one, and the one, two down from that, Dunwoody Club Drive at Ben Creek. Those are two locations where we have the site distance is not as far as we'd like for it to be because of a hill as you're pulling out of those side streets. So, and there have been some crashes at both intersections in the past. So those are more in the, depending on how many signs you need, those are in the $20,000 to $30,000 range for implementation.
Michael's, was that for all three or each?
So at Womack and Leeds, we would really need two signs because there's two streets coming in. That one's probably gonna be closer to 30,000. The Dunwoody Club would just be one sign, and that would be more like 15,000. And these are all, all these numbers I'm throwing out are not based on a final design or anything. These are just kind of back of the napkin estimates. The Dunwoody Village Parkway, this is the intersection where the two shopping centers have driveways kind of in the middle of Dunwoody Village Parkway near Village Burger. There's been some discussion in the past about doing something there to make the crossing a little better and maybe slow people down, such as a raised intersection or a mini roundabout. Something that would fit within the footprint of the existing roadway. I'd say that's on the order of $100,000 type project. North Peach Street, Dunwoody Crossing, we've been putting back plates on a lot of our signals when we have money or opportunity. This is just another intersection that doesn't have it, and it was identified in one of our recent walking audits, safety audits. That's depending on whether we have to change out the actual signal heads or not, that could be a $10,000 to $20,000 type request. And then
You don't have to change the signals?
If we do or not,
Okay, so the range is 10 to 20, or is it different? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'd say 10 to 20.
Okay.
Vanderlyn at Hensley, this is an always stop intersection near Vanderlyn Elementary School where with the parallel parking on the street, we could extend the curb out to make the crossing shorter and also have the stop signs be closer out into the road where they're more visible. Is when they're over on the curb, you're kind of looking through the parked cars to see them. That's probably a $20,000 type.
What does bulb outs mean? Is that a typo or is that?
No, that's correct. So you had, so at the end of the last parallel parking space, you basically build a little island that extends out past the parking space.
So it looks
Yeah.
like a bulb, which
Yeah.
is, so therefore that's where it came from.
Right. Okay, so and then the other here is some sidewalk projects, the Hammond Drive cycle track, that could be as small as just filling the gap by Chick-fil-A. We have where Wild Wings was built, they built cycle track. 1224 built the cycle track, at least on the mall side of Hammond Drive. So there's a gap at Chick-fil-A. It could be that too, as big as doing, the other side of the road doesn't have any cycle track right now, and it's one way on the north side. So, but even just filling in the Chick-fil-A part, you're going to need right away and a wall. So that'll be a significant project.
Is that one that PCID would split maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the Chamblee Dunwoody side.
Wait, can I ask another question about that?
Sure.
So, cause it's in the PCID, wouldn't the mall give us the right of way, or that's just too big an ask?
We will ask.
Okay.
I mean, we're hopeful they would.
And could that also, Hotel Moto Tax could potentially be a revenue source of that for well?
It
the
could.
one portion of it.
Right now, all of that's allocated towards those projects that we committed to the hotels originally. But at some point that could be used once those are done. Shamley Dunwoody sidewalk, there's a short gap between Spalding and the first neighborhood when you come into Dunwoody. And when we had that ribbon cutting out there last year or whenever it was, there seemed to be some support in the neighborhood for closing that short gap. The Tilly Mill and Vermac sidewalks are projects that we had started a few years ago and did some concept design on. And in the case of Vermac, well, both projects, I think we had public meetings on. We set those to the side at the time because we had to reallocate the construction funds for those to all of our federal commitments. And also that was during the time of the path plan that was being developed. So those are still sitting out there kind of at the concept phase.
What is the estimated sidewalk cost for that and CDR?
For Shamley Dunwoody, that's probably a couple $100,000.
Really?
Yeah, the Tilly Mill and Vermac are more like a couple million type. I think those are because the concepts on those involved other improvements too. But I think.
Well, when you're mentioning Vermac, I don't mean to get off the topic, but Vermac, I was looking for a quick win. I was looking for a sidewalk from Parliament to Womack just for that crossing is what we've had incidents on. That was discussed a month ago or several months ago as a quick win. Going Vermac all the way down to Vermac Club is a huge project versus a 1.5 block project. So I don't know. I was hoping for quick wins when it comes to the sidewalk deals. Is that possible or is that not outside the scope?
It's possible. That I think the concept that was previously presented had moving the curb on both sides to put in to close the gap in the bike lanes on Vermac. So that's one of the reasons that's a bigger project. If the council wanted to just do that short gap and just do the sidewalk right now, that's certainly possible.
I guess the point was for the pedestrians walking to the high school, they have no sidewalk when they get to get over to the high school, or they try to cross Vermac. And we've had a number of incidents right there at Parliament and Vermac. So the solution was hopefully just to make it easier connection over to the high school.
On that, sort of similar, but in different, I mean, is that a place where we should, if we're not gonna put the sidewalk, should we put one of the crossing beacons? Where, and crosswalk?
We have something allocated in our ARPA safety funds to build, because there's no ramp on one side of that crosswalk now, to put in a ramp on the one side. There's no sidewalk ramp, like it just goes into the curb on one side. It's always been that way. And do a little some kind of flex post in the road on either side of the sidewalk was something that our Safe Streets coordinator came up with earlier this year. And we have some money allocated in the ARPA safety funds to do a crosswalk improvement there, but it doesn't include the any flashing lights or anything.
How much are those flashing lights if it's just a normal Dunwoody street, not like a big street like Ashford Dunwoody?
For equipment and installation, it's close to $20,000.
Right. I'm kind of with, given the kids are parking back there and stuff, could you bring us a price at some point on just going to the corner, maybe?
Just sidewalk to the corner?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm still not convinced, because kids are kids, that they won't cross there. So I'd like also a price on making that crossing as safe as possible, just to see, because I think kids are kids. So, but yes.
Could be a short term, we fix the
Right.
crossing
And then do the
and
sidewalk.
then all of the above.
Okay, can I ask about Tilly Mill? Oh wait, so the Tilly Mill sidewalk, are any of these stormwater parts too, or no?
They will all have stormwater components,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
And and the bigger the project, the more significant that's gonna be.
okay.
Ashford Connector is that's Ashford Center Parkway right up here trying to either take out a lane or do some kind of path connection between the village and the path that's planned on Ashford Dunwoody. There's no work has been done on that yet, but if we do something where it involves using the existing roadway, then it's, obviously a lower cost, easier to implement project. Peeler Road sidewalk, there's the last gap, between Chamblee, Dunwoody and the park. There's a section there that, on the south side of Peeler, there's a sidewalk gap. It's pretty straightforward, other than there's a creek crossing down at the bottom of the hill that we would maybe have to extend the culvert, so it would involve some potentially permitting with the state or the Federal Corps of Engineers. But otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward project.
And how much do you think something like that would cost?
I need to get I have a number on that. I just don't have it off the top of my head. I can get that. Perimeter Center North.
I'm trying to look at a map because my brain is, where on Peeler Road is that a rock?
It's on the south side of the road between, kind of as you leave the commercial area going down the hill towards Equestrian Way, where we built the sidewalk a few years ago.
Oh, that part of Peeler. Oh, never mind. Okay, I was looking to where the waterworks and stuff. Thank you.
Perimeter Center North, there's back there where Perimeter Center North and just down here, past the Walmart, there's some gaps in the sidewalk, and there's some bike ped improvements that could be made there, and probably in partnership with the CID. Dunwoody Club sidewalk, that could be broken up into several sections, but we don't have any sidewalk on our side of Dunwoody Club, between basically the western city limit and Ball Mill at the country club. And one of those segments, depending on how you divide it up, would involve a bridge crossing of the Ball Mill Creek. And then Holly Bank Circle, that's a short sidewalk gap near Wildcat Park, that when we've been working with the neighborhood about parking for the elementary school and different things, that they've shown some interest. It was on our list when Austin used to be at the old site, because there was just a gap there right near the school, but the neighborhood seems interested in closing that gap in the sidewalk, and they think it would help with some of the parking that happens on the street when people are going to the school. And so that one's probably a 100,000 or less type project. It would just be building some sidewalk within a neighborhood. I think that, yeah.
Well, you have the next page. Oh, no,
That's
that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's parks. Okay, lunch is here. Is your preference to take a break and eat lunch, or eat lunch here, or wait till we finish? Because we're pretty close. Let's crank through it, and then we can ask questions. Okay, you're fine.
Can I ask a quick?
Yes.
Do we have are we still keeping streetlight conversation going? We talked about it at the retreat as well. A citywide, maybe. Streetlights. What about streetlights, Michael? Unmet, we got places that aren't in a streetlight district, and so we talked to the retreat. Are you still working on that on the back end?
Well, yes, we have a list. I didn't put any of that on here because there was some talk at the retreat about amending our charter so that we could it'd be easier to pay for streetlights, capital and maintenance, through the streetlight fee. So I didn't put any of that on here, thinking that still might happen at some point.
Okay, Rachel.
Well, Do you want our comments on this? or-
Yeah, oh, right. Okay, sorry. You would think I'd never run a meeting before. All right, I thought people were just speaking up, but go ahead.
Okay, well,
You're fine.
starting from the bottom, Holly Bank would be like a private sidewalk for that community where the school is not. I know the little sidewalk part. I put that in the lowest category, and then Dunwoody Club Drive, it's a really nice sidewalk they have across the street, and it is a little bit of a danger to get there, but it's already there. So I don't, it would be expensive to go through to put any of that in there. So
Mhm.
I don't like that. If we are working with the mayor's budget, it's a small amount that we can take on. Yeah. Hmm.
Those are your feedback.
Yeah,
I mean-
that's my feedback.
Go ahead.
I'll just pile on the back of that. My preference would be any of the relatively inexpensive projects around the schools
Mhm.
as a priority.
I know somebody else wants to speak. Can I ask a quick question? Where are, when we started all this, or at least when I got on council, our priority was safe routes to schools in terms of sidewalk improvements. Are we finished with that? Like, have you done?
The sidewalks, the only sidewalk I think that's not on here that we haven't done yet is the other end of Peeler. There's the north side of Peeler out near the reservoir. There's a section that doesn't have sidewalk, but other than that, all the sidewalks on here are what's left for gaps on arterial collectors. We really haven't gone much into the neighborhoods, but
Right.
this is the last pieces of sidewalk.
Okay,
But Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would make a statement that the sidewalk on North
Yeah.
Peachtree between the Dunwoody Village Apartments and the
Yes.
Peachtree Middle School are inadequate. They're
Yeah.
about 3 feet wide and really are not safe for 8-year-olds goofing around for the
Yeah,
5 blocks
don't
that they
disagree.
walk. So I mean, I'm just not sure it's adequate. They might be.
we've talked about it, yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Mike.
can comment on that. We've been working on the design on that, and we have money set aside in that ARPA safety to build something there, and we probably will be bringing that forward
That's
in
awesome.
several months, in the next several months.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had
Gotcha.
written that down because when Jonathan gave us his last update in June, he talked about, we didn't amend the budget, but he showed, I believe it was 500K
Mhm.
set aside
Yes.
for that sidewalk on across from Chestnut. We haven't done a budget amendment, but so that, it's not in our presentation.
Right,
So
because it's,
I know these were unmet, but we have stuff still in the pipeline
Right.
that are
Right.
funded.
Right.
go ahead, Stacy.
I guess I'm really intrigued with your on the first one, not the sidewalks, but because when you say, there have been incidents, and I know there have been crashes here and crashes there, like the Dunwoody Club at Bend Creek, the Vanderlyn and Hensley, and because those are incident rates and we can lower that, I would be very interested in looking at that list. I mean, that Tilly Mill, I know Tilly Mill and Mount Vernon Place is $1 million price tag. It's also like a horrible intersection. So I'm really interested in more of the intersection improvements just because of the rate of accidents as well.
Go ahead.
I would like to say what Stacy said, layered on, yes, exactly.
Right.
So where is all the safety? So if we layer on this, what kind of decision matrix are we doing? Where's all the crashes and where are the incidents? Let's have that data and then how much it costs. Because if you're asking right now to prevent potential crashes and we got to spend $30,000 right now at Wilmec and Leeds,
Right.
I would
That's,
make that a motion now and just get it done.
yes. So I have a question. John asked one of my questions, which makes sense because we've already talked about it and it's planned. Is like, one of the things I think we need to be doing is if there are projects out there, and I think I've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, but if there are projects out there that are not on this list because we've already talked about them, but they have a federal component, then we probably need to talk about that at some point to I think one of the big picture questions that we have to start talking about is if we want to do like these intersection improvements, how are we going to pay for them? And I think that it can be at the retreat next year, it doesn't matter, but we have to start figuring out, I'm not necessarily a big fan of, I want to fix the unsafe things, but if it's just making traffic flow better. So my big priority is safety. When you come back to us with recommendations, I would like it to be low-hanging fruit tied to safety outcomes. So the Tilly Mill at Mount Vernon Place, we need to talk about at some point, but we probably can't afford that at this very moment. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, when you say come back with recommendations, so are you looking for, like, with the 1.5 million that you had in your budget, what that 1.5 million would be spent on specifically?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I think council would like. All right, anybody else have questions? Oh, John, sorry.
So that covers that topic, but it doesn't address what's in the budget today. I would also question the $2 million that we're allocating for peeler between Glaze and the park. Winter's Chapel is slated to be, the second half of Winter's Chapel's coming at some point in the next year or two. Does it make sense to do peeler today when we're still waiting on Winter's Chapel? That's $2 million. Is there any way, does it make sense to hold that project? Or is that a project that, based on the engineering, the finances, any federal funds, is there any reason that that cannot be diverted and put off for a year and do more of these safety impact sidewalk projects that we've all talked about? So to me, what's in the budget doesn't need to be there forever either. We can take a look at that line item to see if it still makes sense based on the safety conversations that we've just had. I'd like to see that removed and move that project back a year or two and let the Winter's Chapel happen first and do the neighborhood sidewalks that are safety related. To me, there's more bang for the buck in waiting.
Yeah, I think based on the timeline that project's on right now, it will be probably at least another year before it will go to construction. The design is pretty far along, and there's a little bit of easements and things to require. So in the natural course of things, it's probably going to be, 2027 sometime, maybe the end of 2027, depending on how long.
So the
right
$2 million
goes on.
that's budgeted, what do we need to pay this year to keep that on track for 27?
There's some design and right-of-way money. The 2 million that's showing in the budget was actually allocated, and I think it was originally in the 2023 budget. It's just showing, and this would be more of a finance thing, but I think it was previously budgeted, and the SPOS 1 budget now is really just showing kind of a cash flow of when the money will be spent. It was already put in a previous budget.
And Michael, just to reiterate, the Winter's Chapel portion is federally funded. That's why it was just presented to us a few months ago. It's going to be at least 4 years before that's constructed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what John, are you asking to wait for that sidewalk on?
I'd like to defer the peeler sidewalk in front from Glaze to the park
I think
until
the neighbors are Four Oaks.
Glaze is right by there. There's the auto zone.
Okay, yeah, okay.
What's in the budgets from Glaze to the park?
There's a sidewalk in front of AutoZone already.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe, we're putting in the path. I'd like to defer that $2 million if we can and do $2 million of sidewalk projects that impact safety and have other things that, to me, are higher priority, since the peeler is not going to get done for a number of years anyway.
You mean Winter's Chapel's not?
Winter's
good?
Chapel, I'm sorry, my point. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, that can be, because we're not voting today, but the question is it worth a discussion?
Are you saying that $2 million is in this budget?
It is.
Well, it's
saw-
put in the budget. It's a capital item.
It's a $2 million
We-
capital.
right.
item
We're
for this budget.
kind of, so we should, if we want to really have this conversation, we should pull up the CIP and start
Right.
reviewing all these projects
Right.
and discuss them, and everybody have a yay or nay.
Which
if
we
that's the
can-
approach.
So back to my question before John spoke, which is, if there are projects that are counting on a lot of new federal money, let's assume that the old federal money is going to show up unless it's for EV, and alternative energies. if there's a lot of federal money, like if we have projects that we look at today that we cannot do unless there's a lot of federal money, but we're saving, we have money already allocated and set aside. I think that's a discussion like part of the CIP that we probably need a meeting just to go over the CIP to make sure that we're not saving for projects that might not, like we might want to reprioritize and reorganize based on realistic funding options. Does that make sense? And that's not today,
Some of the projects we don't mix apples and oranges with. So I remember I've talked to you and Michelle about the Village Crossroads project.
right?
And you maybe use that as an example of federal funds, Michael, where I had suggested, do we throw extra money, general funds in that? And you came back with, we want to just use federal funding. We're going to ask for more. Part one. Part two is other cities do revenue bonds off of SPLOST, by the way. If we need more money now, let's consider potential revenue bond. Brookhaven does it. Other cities do revenue bonds against a guaranteed cash stream. We need the money today. We're still doing this pay-as-you-go model. All right, so consider a revenue bond as well.
And I just want to make a point about the CIP budget too, because that's a short to medium term planning document. And it's not the same as the general operating budget where it's revenues in, revenues out certain year. We're looking 5 years down the road and we're allocating anticipated capital funding for that entire 5-year period. So in essence, we're assigning it to projects that we're anticipating to build in the next 5 years. It's not money that is necessarily that, so we can shuffle those cards that deck any way we want across all of the projects. But if you're, the money has already been allocated and it follows the project. So it doesn't necessarily follow the calendar year. I mean, obviously we could use funds, but then we'd have to find another way to reassign funds to that, any projects that we defund within the next 5 years. And all, to my understanding, with the CIP, all of our anticipated SPLOST funds are allocated, and all the funds, whether it's grant money, SPLOST, general capital, whatever it is, those are all those funds are already allocated. So it's not like if we take money out of something that is in the CIP for 26, that money will be available down the road. And that's just something we need to consider when we're evaluating the CIP, because it operates a little different than the general operating budget.
But I guess my point is that we just defer that down and everything would move then at that point for that project.
But once you remove it from one project, it's gone from that project. There's not going to be additional revenues in the following year to replace it, is the only point I'm trying to make. So when we can certainly have those discussions, but we need to consider the full 5 year.
Right.
Am I hearing that the suggestion is to just change the priority of already funded projects? Or to completely shift? Is your suggestion, we've got a $2 million project, let's grab one a little lower that we already have funding for and move it higher?
I guess my thought was to take the 2 million that we're putting on the Peeler project, since that's sort of part of the Winter's Chapel one. I would wait for the Winter's Chapel to be done and push that back and use that $2 million for sidewalks and other safety implications that are just an easier, more shovel ready.
But it's something that's already on the list that has maybe funding allocated 3 years from now instead of next year.
But we also have 1,000 things that we just went through.
Yeah,
on
I'm just
sidewalk.
trying
I was
to
just trying to think of
clarify.
that easy
I
list.
think,
I'm just
I
trying to
think
clarify
I
exactly
this-
what we're.
I think that we ought to schedule a CIP review at some point. And so that's what we're not, but I think we should do that. All right. Any other questions? So my concern is that we get, my vision with this is that we get the low hanging fruit done, but to not quite John's point. Are there projects that are this close to being fully funded that we could start, or is everything planned out nicely in the CIP and we don't have to? These are things that you'd rather do, I guess.
That, well. the-
That wasn't a very clear question,
So
sorry.
on the CIP, just real quick, SPLOST one is money was already budgeted previously, and it's just showing how it's gonna be spent out.
Right.
Same with the old 350 capital fund.
Mhm.
Hotel motel really isn't changing much because we're trying to fund that Ashford Dunwoody project.
Mhm.
So the SPLOST 2 project, the budget for this year there wasn't really a lot of room to do anything new because you'll see most of the
Mhm.
money over the 5 years is allocated to 3 projects that we have federal commitments on: Winters Chapel, North Shallowford, and the Village Crossing project. So right now, as Joe mentioned, we're gonna be asking as the opportunity arises for future years to get more federal money to those projects. But right now, we're assuming this is all we have. And so we're putting all the local money we need to it to make sure that those commitments are met. So I'm saying all that, I guess, to say in the SPOS 2 budget right now, there's not a lot of wiggle room to do anything but maybe some really small projects and, without kind of messing up some of the big ones. And we don't have very many projects that are shovel ready. I mean, the Tilly Mill at Mount Vernon Place would be one that's pretty much shovel ready. We've been working on something down on Perimeter Center East that we're going to be presenting to council that could be done pretty quickly. And then, the projects that are already in the pipeline, Peeler is far enough along in the design. It's not shovel ready, but it's pretty, it won't take much more to get it to construction. And those are the big projects. I'm not talking about some of the little things on here that can just be kind of plugged in. So I don't know if that helps.
But the little projects like the signs and stuff, those are not really need to be shovel ready. You can just do
Right,
them,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And then North Peachtree is a different project, but it's getting to be shovel ready. You're working
Yes.
on it. Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and just a quick question too. I know in ARP2 we have around 687,000 of Safe Streets construction. Has that been allocated to specific projects yet, or is that something we could tap into to do some of these smaller projects here?
About 100,000 or so is dedicated to little small
Mhm.
projects, and some like Nandina, which we've already done. There's 500,000 set aside for reconstructing the sidewalk on North Peachtree.
Okay. Anybody have we'll do a CIP review. And at some point, does anybody have other questions on this list? Okay, Parks. Oh, John.
We're gonna do the review. I'm just looking now at the line item budgets, and for example, it looks like the Vermac Road, Parliament Way to Vermac Swim Tennis is gonna be completed this year, like it's on the schedule. We're funding $100,000 of a total $250,000 project, like it's ready for construction. There's no other expenses in it. I'm looking at the budget, now it's
Right.
on that list, and it makes me, it sounds like you're saying it's not gonna happen, that it's too much, but yet in the budget, it looks like it's ready to go.
I think that's.
Is that
I
design?
think that's on SPOS 1. That's that cash flow thing there where the money's already there. And I think finance shows when they anticipate it would be spent. If it's showing in 2026, I don't know that it would be spent in 2026, but I think that's the money that's left and currently allocated in that project. We haven't allocated, that would be design. We haven't allocated for construction on that project.
Okay,
at this
again,
point.
I'm not seeing any
Yeah.
other funds. I'm trying to figure out, I'm looking line by line to try to figure out what we're doing and what we're not. I know we can do that in the next couple, in
Okay.
the next month.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I mean, if council decided they just want to put a sidewalk in from Parliament to Womack, that money could be used for that.
Okay.
What might help on the CIP conversation is there's when is all the cash accrued fully, and then when is actual estimated construction begin as well, because we know there's pauses in between, because you read this Mount Vernon Road to Tilly Mill intersection improvements fully funded FY 2025, but we know that construction is, so potential in some of these things, we know that they're funding. When is construction on these guys too?
I also have another line item. When I saw the Dunwoody Elementary School path to Village North Court, we're putting $50,000 into that. It's a total $100,000 project. What's the status of that? Did we say that was going forward, or it's.
That was budgeted. That's another one that was budgeted, I don't know, 3-4 years ago.
The neighborhood does not want it.
Right. So it has not ever been moved. Council would have to move it. So
So I
it's
think
just
that's
sitting
the
there.
purpose of a CIP review, is to go through the projects and figure out what is happening
Correct.
and council, because ultimately we're responsible for putting things on and off that list.
And that's why I'm questioning things
Right.
that I'm not sure that are line item review of whether it's appropriate to move forward on some of these. or
Right,
not.
so that's why we'll we'll put CAP on the agenda in the next 4 weeks, Eric.
And then final question, if I may, from my perspective, I
Right.
saw that there was no zeroed out line item when it came to traffic calming. We haven't done traffic calming in a while. What's the status of traffic calming? We've typically saved or reserved 50,000, 60,000, whatever it was for a project every year. We haven't done any in a while, or what's the status of the zero line item for traffic calming?
Yes, we do have some money still in that line item. I think maybe $15,000-$20,000. Whenever we get low on that, we stick another 25,000 in there for studies and different things. But I think we've only had 2 petition requests in the last 2 years on that. So we're not getting a lot of petitions, and we haven't had any that have gone through to be adopted. So we have some money left in there, and there hasn't been a need to spend a lot of it.
I would say that we may not have had many petitions, but we've had petitions in the past that failed based on our very tough requirements. So I'm not sure if the requirements we need to look at those to see if they're appropriate, or to see if it's ways to expand the traffic calming that the residents want that may or may not fall within the guidelines that we set previously many years ago. So again, there's cut through streets where I think the neighbors may want traffic calming, and the policies that council put in place 8 years ago may or may not be appropriate today. We may want to revisit that if we're not putting them in and residents want it, we basically want to revisit that topic. Thank you.
I will say, I also think they fail because many residents don't want them, and that's part of the problem. When the number of times I've suggested to people that email me about their traffic, that I'm like, here's the document. They're like, no, that's not the solution. I'm like, well, okay. All right, so we'll do the CIP review in the next few weeks. And then, any other questions for Michael before we go to parks? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, wait, wrong PowerPoint. Mhm. Right. Wait, where is?
Okay. Okay, sorry.
All right, so if you want
Anxious
to,
to leave.
I guess just go through each of these, like what it encompasses,
Okay, any pricing as they go?
if you can,
Okay, sure.
but you don't have, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so this is the list we've compiled. This is in order based on needs, community wants, asset management in terms of useful life of certain amenities. Homecoming Park, of course, number 1. We've estimated $6 million. That's just the latest. The number's coming from our designer, so we just want to be conservative with that.
And on that, Mayor, once we bid that out, we'll know.
Yep.
I know y'all said 5. I'm comfortable with that number. Let's bid it. Once we know the number, if it's something different, we'll get back with y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get us components, price on components, please, when you do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'll have a total price, but also like individual pieces. Okay, keep
Okay,
going.
including volume.
Including
And
what?
for-
Volleyball.
For that one, yeah.
Right,
Well, yeah, make sure we.
right.
Right.
But just go ahead.
Promotional trail, this is something I'm working with Public Works on. There's a portion of the trail, you've probably seen it by now, where it's kind of barricaded off. We have a little bit of sinking. So we're working with engineers now to determine that fix. That's something that will have to happen, obviously for safety reasons. Springwood Park, you may also see it by the name of Flyover Bridge Park. This came out of Connecting Dunwoody placemaking several years ago. It was the number 3 priority. 2 Bridges Park, and was in terms of, the number 1, obviously that's done. This is over there near State Farm, Campus 244, right there in the corner, faces that beautiful Dunwoody sign we have. There is $50,000 for design, for this in the 2026 budget. And then about a little over $1 million in 2029 to start construction, and then the other $500,000 in 2030 currently.
Okay.
Brook Run Playground. We're coming up about 21, 22 years on this. Obviously this is our signature park. We're getting ready to replace the swings. We just want to be mindful, because of its age, updating, and bringing, really modernizing accessibility, inclusivity with this park. We're estimating probably $500,000 with that. Again, these are just, my back of the napkin, just based on the size alone. Brook Run Park wayfinding. So according to Placer, Brook Run averages about 1.9 million visitors a year. It's clearly our signature park. This is something we've looked at internally for several years now. It would include directional signage off of your three entrances, North Peachtree, Peeler, and Barclay. Because we still have a lot of people who either only come to the playground, don't know about the skate park, only come for the concerts, don't know about the memorial, things like that. So part of this package would be directional signs, but then also an amenity sign for each park as you're driving through. It would match the park standards we have for our monument signs, everything else already. So that's on our list. Depending on what we can do, we're saying about $150,000. That's to do everything I've mentioned all at once. Obviously, that's something that can be phased in. Wynwood Hollow Pavilion, also starting to see some aging and some wear and tear with that. We would not completely remove it. We do like the nature feel of the look, the wood that it has is kind of this retro parks feel. So it would maybe be fixing some rotted pieces, for the wood, potentially electrical, just because we do get that request when people rent it out for birthday parties, things like that. That would be minimal, maybe $80,000 depending on everything we do there. Wildcat Park Phase 1, I made some notes about bathrooms and looking at some fields, things like that. The latest number we have on really kind of phasing it out, it would be about $4 million per phase at 3 phases. Again, these are just high level numbers from the design firm. Art Center window replacements. This was discussed when we did the expansion at Sproul several years ago. Essentially, it's that new hallway that used to be external is now internal. They're the kind of outdated windows are starting to see a little bit of breaking just because they're a little fragile. We've had Allen on ice for a few years on this, so I think it's the ask is coming. The Brook Run Park greenhouse. This would to me would be a great opportunity for like a sustainability grant. Probably 50-60-year-old greenhouse. It needs some love, but that's something I would work with the community garden group, and again, a grant for that. Maybe $100,000 if we had to update that entire thing alone. Dunwoody Trailway Bridge replacements. Again, we're just looking at useful life of the trail. We're starting to see just a little bit of wood rot in some areas, so we just want to kind of be mindful of those replacements here in the future. Waterford playground shades came out of when we built the playground. We knew that there would probably be a request to come back later and add shades like we did at Two Bridges. Maybe $100,000 for that one. And then the concession stand shade, again, has been asked from both Rush Union and soccer players groups that use that. This would be almost like an awning off of the roof line that would cover the patio that sits atop while you look down on the fields. Maybe $100,000 for that one. I think that's the only, yeah. Sorry, that was a lot, I know.
I have a question, but somebody else needs to go because I'm coughing. Hold on. Does anybody have questions? John?
No real questions. Thanks for the list. I didn't know where Springwood Park was. It's not on our website. So just
Not yet.
FYI. Now I know. I know
not-
the,
it's-
I
it's
just
really
didn't know the
not
name. I didn't know
usable,
what it
yeah.
was. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a park yet.
I rode Brook Run yesterday on my bike and going through the trails, and I was looking for the repairs and looking for there's erosion. There's erosion all over the
Mhm.
place. We can fill in with dirt, but we probably also need to fill in with rock. It's repairing the trail is expensive. If there's ways in which we can physically go and say, okay, we need small riprap or whatever it is make sure the drainage doesn't underroad the trail. There's a number of places that I saw that if it was my house, I'd want to repair that and repair this, just make sure the water drainage doesn't have long-term, problems. I went through the dog park, talked to people there. They could use a little bit more shade, a little bit more seat, not shade, but seating. There's shade everywhere.
Yep.
But we don't have a dog park. We have a people park there where dogs go.
Do they
So,
know they can sponsor benches and stuff? Do you know?
yeah, they probably
Okay.
can. I was just trying to talking to people all
That's
over the
good.
place. And then you were talking about the signage.
Mhm.
All of those map signs are really faded.
Yep.
Those, I mean, you could do the big signage, of course, but those map signs some of them are in really bad shape.
Yeah, I'm working with Sky Design now. That's who illustrated those. We're updating all of those. We did a big walkabout as a group this summer, and
Okay.
their side design has a few things they owe me
Awesome.
coming soon for the trail. Yep.
Yeah, other than that, again, I would like to know the quick wins on some of these things. What are some of the things that we could, plan long-term, and what's the things we can hit short-term? So, thank you. Sure.
So, oh, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a little of what John said. So I think obviously we've already talked about homecoming, but the trail repairs, if there's obvious needs, I mean, I think the trailway is probably the most used asset in the city. So obviously that's a safety issue and everything. So I think those rise to the top. Quick question on the Brook Run playground replacement. It sounds like the plan would be to replace all the equipment at once. Is there a way to phase that and in a way that doesn't negatively impact the cost to the city? Because for two reasons. First of all, maybe we're able to spread that cost out over a couple of years, but also usability. So we're not shutting the complete playground down for an extended period of time. We're only maybe certain portions, because again, the playground is very well used, and I'd hate to shut that down for a month or two for a complete replacement. So is that part of the plan now, or
It
is that?
is.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, because to your point, because I don't want to close down the playground all at once. There's no way. No thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Joe.
So when I had sit down, I appreciate Eric and team, I sat down, spent a couple hours talking with the whole budget. And I learned what Springwood was. I forgot about it again. But I'm trying to jump in the CIP right now and find the line item, but I did have in my notes indirectly with your conversation. We have a $350,000 expenditures set aside in the CIP to do some concept plans on 3 different parks, right? So, and they're all in the perimeter area. So it was noted there's a 50K set aside for Springwood. Did you mention that while I was out?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. The 50K, and then there's a 50K. It said perimeter MARTA, but I want to make sure everybody understand. Do we know where that is? Did you all talk about that while I was out? So there's perimeter MARTA, which is underneath in the mall area underneath the rail line. So that's 50K set aside using the hotel motel tax for doing a concept. And then there was also there's a top end kind of trail back by the behind the Best Buy by the cemetery to extend that potentially. So there's 150K set aside in hotel motel tax on the tourism product development component that's going to these concepts. And as I'm just kind of summarizing what I talked to staff about on those 3. Obviously it's a budget, but then they're all 3 going to come to council event potentially, right? When they're ready to bid that for a contract, to let that to bid for consulting. And just the one note I just had is that the one for the perimeter MARTA one is when we get down to it, that property's owned by the mall. And as we talked about, it takes forever for them to give us easement and stuff. I just want to be super conservative if we do set aside the 50K for the perimeter MARTA concept, that we do not spend the 50K until we have basically a near legal agreement from the property owners.
That's CIP though, right, too? We can talk about it during CIP, or is it not?
Yeah, it is CIP.
Sort of, so I don't
yeah.
disagree with that. And also, I know we're talking about that, but I think we need to take chairs out there and sit under the train tracks before we invest. I mean, I know it looks terrible, but we need to figure out what's realistic over there because it's very noisy. Okay, so how much of your operating budget each year is maintenance?
About $2 million.
Okay, and I presume because it made this list that none of this is budgeted for in your 2 million of maintenance, or that's not how this works?
These are all of the capital needs that I'm starting to plan for.
Okay, so for 2026, you're gonna have $2 million in maintenance funds. That's what it sounds like.
Well, we split it up.
Okay, maybe
So it's
maybe
basically the
Richard or
Triscapes contract is
Okay, that's
most of
not what I'm
it.
talking
And
about.
then just for maintenance is actually closer to just 1 million.
Okay, so you have
Maintain
a,
everything.
right, so you have 1 million.
Mhm.
Have you allocated that for 26 yet? Just so I can understand. So in other words, if Jay said to you in the budget process, you have 1 million for maintenance, not Triscapes,
Mhm.
do you know what you're spending it on?
We have an idea of what's probably going to break in terms of repairs and things like that
Okay.
that we planned for, but a lot of it is.
As
you
it
know,
happens.
As it happens,
So-
yes.
If, like, I'm trying to pick an example, like the Pernicial Trail repairs. Could you spend that 1 million on that or some of that 1 million? Or do you want?
I,
what
or
is
I
it?
say I like to keep operating just to like, again, more the day to day.
So we're spending $1 million a year on day-to-day maintenance of facilities beyond these, well, some of these are not maintenance
Right.
requests,
Yeah,
okay.
these are all the capital enhancements that we have planned.
right? So sort of unrelated, but the swings at Georgetown Park,
Mhm.
where are they? Are
They
they,
should be here in November.
okay. And the reason that's taken so long is,
It took a little bit to get their insurance because that was an insurance claim, and the manufacturing timeline. Same thing where Brook Run's probably gonna be here on the same time,
okay.
November, yep.
All right. Thank you. I think that answered that. So when we review the CIP, we'll review parks too, right? And so we can look at some, like maybe this priority order isn't totally right. Or, I mean, the repair, like, in other words, Springwood Park, where it's located, I mean, maybe we don't, we shift things around on this list. So go ahead.
So for Homecoming and Springwood, those have project numbers, they're in the
Yes.
CIP. All these other ones
Or not.
are in my, like our department budget.
Okay,
That we use for planning,
okay.
so, yep.
Okay. Anybody have anything else, Rachel? Okay, I think Rachel's comments opened up some questions for me, but, and probably for all of us on some of these needs and how we're gonna cover them. We're now in year 2 of SPOS, correct, Jay? So in 3 years, when someone else is negotiating with DeKalb County and we are setting our priorities, we can now shift it up and spend a lot more on parks, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, but then something else doesn't get spent. All right, thank you. No, I think we're I mean, is that all that was on this agenda? I mean, that's the end of the presentation. Does any, I have one question about the budget that I forgot to ask. I wrote it down and I still forgot it. Richard, so when I looked back, it may be a question somebody else is gonna have to answer, Eric, but when I look back at the budget, when I was looking to see like how our budget's grown since I started as mayor. And most of it is shockingly is CPI related, right? There's a huge, you know, when you take what we spent in 2020 or 19, whatever, and you ask the ChatGPT to do it in today's dollars, it makes a big difference. But one of the areas that stood out to me was the change in IT. I think some of that is because some things might have been in other categories, but even when I looked at the other categories, it wasn't a full explanation. I presume, can you explain or get us an explanation about why the increase? Does that make sense? My question?
Sure. We've moved a lot of stuff. We have it housed and I think
Okay.
Ginger has a list. We had it housed in the departments and IT, to get the focus. So
Mhm.
IT knew of all the software that was, that the city was using, all the departments were using. We moved it all into, IT basically. So,
Okay.
she's got a list of everything that's been moved in, so I can work with Ginger.
And then
Yes.
I expect though, it's helpful for the public to understand that there have been increased cost and security and stuff and requirements. I think insurance companies are requiring more now. So if we could just have that when we talk about the budget again.
Sure. Mhm.
Just so people understand. It was on my list.
No problem.
Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Stacy. No, go ahead. Okay, John.
Madam Mayor, what's your timing for the CIP where you have a budget first read on the 14th? Does that sound right? So we should probably do it before then. What's your timing and what's your
Wait,
thoughts?
we don't, when do we vote on the budget?
28.
28.
28,
So, well, we can either discuss having a called meeting to do it, because the 14th is our next meeting. Or we can do it, I don't know what the agenda looks like for the 14th. We could also do it that day, because
That's an option if y'all want to do it that day, because we can certainly modify or look at the
we
agenda.
could also come in early, like we could do a called meeting. Go ahead,
Sure.
John.
I was just hoping that on the 14th, we would have a budget that's 90% set and the public would know what we're talking about because it's a public hearing. They're
Right.
coming in to talk to us about what's in the budget. Having us make major changes on the 14th to me is inappropriate.
Well, I can do a called meeting the week before. Okay, I'll send out a doodle poll. No, oh, are you not here? Because then that thing gets staff time to change. Okay, well, I'll send out a doodle poll.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so with your mayor recommendations for the homecoming park and the $7 million, are you, I think the consensus was that we're fine with that. Are you going to then put that in the budget that we will review?
I don't know how this works. Because we can also allocate it as we spend it.
It could be an
I-
amendment
But I think
Right.
that
after.
I personally would like to see it in the budget so
Okay.
that we are telling the public that we are committing to spending this $7 million out of the reserve fund and we are committed to doing homecoming park.
Proper procedure would be for council to amend the proposed budget at the next council. And that would actually give you a chance to vote to change the budget that was proposed.
But it's in the proposed budget. No, it's not in the budget. Okay, so we'll just have to amend it at the council meeting. And the truth is that if the consensus is homecoming park and we want to wait for the other department heads to have their specific recommendations, we can amend the budget later, or you can just say the amount.
Well, right, no, but I like your mayor recommendations, I
Right.
think, because it does give the department heads that flexibility. I'm fine with that, but I also
Right.
want it reflected in the budget that we pass.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Okay, all right. I'll do our best on CIP. Everyone might not be able to be there, but we can, and nothing is in concrete is with stuff that hasn't started or we're not close. So go ahead, Joe.
So if, let's just say the 7 million or whatever it is gets
Right.
approved, that would be then, when council makes a motion, that would be added to the CIP portion of the budget.
It
Is
would
that a correct
be
statement?
one motion to do it all.
Right, so then in the final, when we come on the 14th and vote on it on 27th, it'll be inside that budget book. Inside the CIP, these actions.
If you did it at a special called meeting, you don't really have an item before you to vote on to amend. We could put the budget on there and you could. We
No,
can
we
work
would
around
have,
it.
no, we would amend it on the 14th.
Yeah, that's what I
Right.
suggested, Commissioner.
Work it out before that.
Yes.
Right, we would have it ready on
You-
the
Yeah,
14th.
the nuts and
Yeah.
bolts can be put together. The vote would occur on the 14th.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
The
Just
vote
the
to amend,
amendment.
correct.
Do you vote on the 14th or you just?
You could.
It's a
There would be
first
an item
read.
for you to hear it. We just do it for a public hearing. You only.
You vote
we have
on
two- Do we have to have two hearings? Okay, two hearings. So you could vote to amend it. That would be.
both the
appropriate.
14th and the 27th are public hearings. Okay,
But we can't vote for the budget until the
But
27th.
so the vote to amend would occur then before the public hearing?
No, it's a public hearing would be that
the
same
public
day.
hearing is,
Yeah, but
On the
in
14th.
just I'm asking a really technical question, but just in sequence of the meeting, the public is going to want to comment on the budget proposal. So if they have the public hearing first, then we amend it after the hearing, they're giving feedback on
So
changes.
can I make a recommendation? If we're gonna have a CIP meeting prior,
yeah.
that staff could put together a memo clearly detailing what council's intentions are for the amendment so that the public has a chance to review what, even though it's not officially in the budget, the public will be fully aware of what our intentions
That
are.
would be the perfect method, is that there be documentation that says, here's the original budget.
Right,
At this meeting, here's what was proposed as an amendment. Both will be out there.
okay, that works. All right, I'll send a doodle poll later today. before at some point to see when people are kind of available. Any other things? Okay. It's over. We need a motion to adjourn. Unless y'all want to stay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We stand adjourned. There's lunch. Well, you can pick it up, eat it wherever you want.